The broadcast is live.
Yes, it is. We're waiting for Tim because he had a bio break.
Yes.
We need that Archie Bunker toilet flushing sound. That was like the first toilet flushing sound on TV too.
Yeah. Evidently, Mother Nature called, and her call waiting's a bitch. So.
Yeah. Mother Nature.
Yeah, I remember being like 5 or 6, and I was watching a soap opera, and I always wondered, why don't the characters go to the toilet?
I don't think I ever wondered that. Not once watching TV. Like I said, I can remember it from all the toilet flushing jokes from All in the Family. That's all I remember. It was like the only reference to toilets on TV.
I was watching a documentary on YouTube about a month or so ago, and they were talking about the Brady Bunch, and evidently even then you could not even make a reference to a toilet on
you couldn't.
They could show them they could show the characters in the bathroom as long as they did not show the toilet.
Yeah, we got weird toilet hang-ups.
And I'm thinking,
Mackenzie, hello.
Wow, scary. Mm-hmm. I need to try your chili recipe, by the way.
Okay.
That looks pretty good.
Yeah, it works for me. Mm-hmm. Like today I made, I actually made the chili on Tuesday? Chili also always tastes better after it's found its flavor in the fridge overnight. So it's like the first day, it's okay. The second day, when you pull it out of the fridge and heat it up, it's actually better.
I really don't judge either way. I like it fresh next day. Whatever.
I like it either way too, but it does actually find its flavor in the fridge. It gets more flavorful.
Gotcha.
Happy Thanksgiving to Rob Ripa. So that's a real thing. And like I said, and this year I made it different for the first. I'd never thought of to do this because usually, like in my chili, I put stewing beef in it, so it's got like cubes of beef in it. And I also like to put ground meat in it, which I usually use ground turkey. This time I decided to make little meatballs out of the ground turkey, which I'd never done before. Mm-hmm. And I just threw in the same spices that I use in the chili into the meatballs and made little meatballs and browned them up first and then threw them in there. I was like, wow, I like the little meatballs. Yeah. There's Tim.
That was underwhelming, but anyway. But we started on time,
Yeah.
With these streams, it used to be, a tradition. It was like a technical difficulty. I get messages, interrupted, phone calls. Let's hope that doesn't become a tradition. Anyway.
Just don't cross the streams.
Oh, yeah. But we got Rob Ripa here. Happy Thanksgiving. Yep. Mackenzie's here. Hello. All right. Hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving or whatever they have over there with Paolo, the early Grinch. So
today was Thursday. That's it.
Well, we can come up with a holiday over there. Not a problem.
No, we have a holiday on next Tuesday. It's to commemorate the anniversary of when we kicked the Spanish king out of Portugal, the Habsburg monarchy.
Those dirty Habsburgs.
Yeah.
So before we get into what I feel like is what we were talking about before we came on air, there's nothing that says Thanksgiving like talking about serial killers and comics and morality. No. But Jared, tell everybody what you had for lunch. Because it was on Facebook and you wished everybody a happy Thanksgiving.
I had pie for breakfast, pumpkin pie with whipped cream. And then for lunch, I had chili over mashed potatoes. You know what it is usually I bring the potato. We usually have Thanksgiving dinner over my aunts who had knee surgery this year. And I bring the mashed potatoes. So this time I made some mashed potatoes and put chili over the top. It was good.
Oh, nice. See, I just had an idea. If you had cheesy garlic mashed potatoes and then you put the chili on the top, that would be
don't even need regular potatoes were just fine.
Gotcha.
Well,
see, I'm split on cheese on my chili. Sometimes I put cheese on my chili, but often I don't because I like the flavor of the chili more. Because like cheddar cheese can be pretty overwhelming flavor, and it can change the flavor of the chili a little too much for me sometimes. But sometimes I have it.
So it makes it too good.
Yeah, it makes it too well. Cheese is good on stuff that isn't good to begin with. If you got something that's kind of mediocre to begin with, you put cheese on it. Macaroni and cheese is great because macaroni on its own is kind of plain. Throw some cheese on it.
You got to put some sugar in that macaroni and cheese. Trust me. Yeah.
Nah.
And then, well, when I was a kid, our poor boy meal, I didn't know it had a name until a couple years ago because a coworker, knew what knew. She brought it up to me and then told me, I actually saw it in a comic book. I don't know which one. I can see the picture in my head. But it's called cowboy hats is what I found out because you're supposed to cut the weenies at the end and spread them up. But it's a weenie. It's a leftover dish. Weenie, smush it into the mashed potatoes and put a piece of cheese over it. And then you heat it up. And it's called cowboy hats. And the place I saw it in a comic book where I found the name, they had cut them up to look like little octopi, on top of it. And I'm like, but it was called a cowboy hat. It's, looks like a 10-gallon hat. But no, we just stuck it in there, and it's actually good, But
that just reminded me of one time at a New Year's Eve party. One of my friends, she brought some chili, and she hadn't really made chili before, and her chili had like cut up hot dogs in it. And my friend and I both kind of looked at her and went, "Why are there cut off hot dogs in there?" And she's like, "Oh, I wanted to add some hot dogs for flavor." I'm like, rule number 1, hot dogs don't add flavor to anything.
Well, when it comes to chili, well, first of all, fried tuck is right on top of this. Put some jalapeno chili. It's so weird. I have a cast iron stomach, but there are certain things that will kill me. It's amazing. 2-3 foods are my kryptonite. But one of the things that used to be that I would not bring up around people would be religion, politics, and is chili if it has beans in it. It's not supposed to have beans. And I'm like, I'm not having this conversation. All you did was watch Big Bang Theory. Here we go. Messages. Let's see what's going on.
What I like? What beans I like in my chili these days?
Navy.
Chickpeas. Garbanzo beans.
I've had like 3-bean chili and all this stuff.
I've had lots of beans. I've used all sorts of beans in my chili. Didn't have any beans in this chili. But I find chickpeas these days work the best because they're very firm. And they hold, like sometimes like you use kidney beans or whatever, they get mushy in the chili. And I prefer them a little firm. And chickpeas stay firm no matter how long you cook them. And they don't have a strong flavor either, so they don't interfere with the flavor of the spices and stuff.
Man, people are sending. It's an inside joke. People are sending me TikTok videos of Africa by Toto,
The internet's favorite song.
My life. Everything's got a story, man.
It could be worse. You could be getting rickrolled.
Yeah.
Rain. This is the rain getting heavier. And then you come in with the bass.
Africa by Toto launched the musical career of a Norwegian metal singer, Leo Moracchioli. No. All his YouTube channel is all about doing metal versions of rock and pop songs from the 80s and 90s.
That's hilarious.
And for 20 years, no one had any idea that the lyric was, "I bless the rains down in Africa." Everybody thought it was, "I miss the rains down in Africa." Me included.
Yeah. And
I found out I was blessed.
There's a meme. Oh, see, I still sing it, "I miss." I know it's "I bless" now.
Yeah.
I was one of those people for decades.
Everybody. Were there. Everybody who ever heard that song, no one had any idea it was "I bless the rains down in Africa."
But there was a meme going around forever that was like, kids will never know the hardship of singing the wrong lyrics for decades and then finding out your whole life's a lie when the internet came along.
Oh, yeah. There are entire books about misheard lyrics.
Well, you used to be able to buy a magazine that was nothing but song lyrics. That's how I learned.
That's true.
That's how I learned the lyrics to "Hungry Like the Wolf."
Yeah. Well, the worst is when you like you like your misheard lyrics better.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Sammy Hagar made a living from listening to other songs and writing down what he thought the lyrics were. And I'm like,
with
Word Out
Hungry
still
Like the
does.
Wolf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
all right,
With
we got
Hungry Like the Wolf, you just don't understand Simon Le Bon's accent.
yeah, it's
like
cool.
what song is that? Blue Oyster Cult, Don't Fear the Reaper.
Yeah.
I always thought it was Caesar's Don't Fear the Reaper. Because they're immortal god kings. But no, it's Seasons Don't Fear the Reaper. I like Caesar's better.
I'm gonna have to absorb that one.
Caesars don't fear the Reaper. They're immortal god kings.
Now I'm interested in his take on the song Godzilla, just to see what he's going to throw in there.
There's lyrics to that song besides "Oh no, there goes Tokyo."
History
Go,
points
go,
out the
Godzilla.
folly of man.
I didn't know there was any other lyrics to that one.
That's hilarious. All right, we've got like between 6 and 8 people popping in and out. So Scott, tell us what you did on your Thanksgiving, because I loved your answer before the show.
Oh, I stayed up all night and I slept all day.
Yes. And I was up till 3 o'clock in the morning researching Punisher, trying to find stuff in my collection to point out he's a serial killer. And watch bad movies and Law and Order. That's amazing. We need. I feel like making a list of songs and song lyrics and just having a whole show on it now. It's you've rattled the the jukebox here. You dropped the dime.
I mean, there's certain songs that are notorious for being misrepresented, like.
No, it doesn't, Friar Tuck. Not if you grew up thinking it was Caesar's.
Excuse me while I kiss this guy.
Blinded by the Light's a very good example of that.
Oh yeah,
like a douche.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
I mean, what the hell is a deuce? You had that song by Manfred Mann singing about a deuce, and then you had Kiss singing
it's a Springsteen. It's allegedly a motorcycle rider.
Ah.
I guess the deuce is 2 wheels.
So is it roll out instead of rolled up?
No, it's rolled up. Like you roll up on your bike.
Gotcha. Yeah. See, in my mind, you roll out. I got you. Yeah, it's a generational thing.
Well, deuce.
No, you roll out to leave.
Yeah, deuce is also a term for the number 2, especially when you're playing cards.
Mm-hmm. Or you're dropping a deuce.
All right. Well, before we get on that topic about the Punisher, I know Jared's got.
We're all over the place.
I was just going to tell you a nice little inside thing I found out this week. That's cool to give people something to collect. Rob Tokar was an editor in the 90s in Marvel, early 90s. And when he was new, he used to they used to give him all the books that were near cancellation. So he was always, had the books that were being canceled. So in 1990, do you remember when the direct editions didn't have a UPC on them because comic shops didn't have scanners? So that they used to put art in there. The little Spider-Man head or whatever they're promoting. So there was this one time where it's in 1991 because he put that in there. He decided to put a little on the last issues of certain comics. There were 3 of them, I think it lasted on. He put like Armageddon 1991, and then the little corner box art, and then a number 1, 2, and 3. And I found 2 of the issues.
I'm going to laugh because it sounds familiar.
RoboCop 23. It's only in the UPC. It was like a joke in the UPC, which was RoboCop 23 is number 2 of the series. Toxic Avenger number 11 is number 3 of the series, but I haven't been able to find the first one in the series. So you got to look in 1991 comics that Rob Tokar edited and find the last issue of some other series that has Armageddon 1991 and number 1 on it.
Oh, geez.
In the UPC box. I was like, look at that. Something else to collect that no one knows exists.
Oh, man. I'm not going to dig through my books because, like, what you're talking about, for some reason, and it could just be the power of suggestion here. You know what I mean? But I'm sitting here like, this sounds familiar. I didn't know it was a thing. I'm like...
Well, I was using Mike's Amazing World of Comics to try and find them.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Because you can I looked up like Marvels, and that's how I found, I think, RoboCop. Toxic Avenger, Rob knew about. He was like, I think it's in this one. But it was kind of like you could I like clicked on his name and Mike's, and it gave all the comics he edited. So I was scrolling through them, trying to find one that ended in 1991 and could be number one, but I wasn't able to find it.
I would back up to 1990. I bet there's one at the end. I bet there's one cover date in 1990,
Could be.
and they didn't, so they.
It's got to be before RoboCop 23 came out, because that was number 2.
Wow, that's
but
amazing.
I was just like, oh, look at that, a little series that of last issues that no one knows exist.
Oh my god,
because they were just kind of a joke. I found that amusing. I love finding out stuff that I didn't know existed.
Yeah, there's times where you bring up this stuff, and I'm like, I gotta get off here, man. I'll be right back. I got some research to do. Oh my gosh, man, we got people rolling in here, man. We got Mr. Gretzky, Mind the Comics. Friar Tuck's been hanging out. Mackenzie's going to be back. I think he's the one who might be popping in and out here.
In and
out. Of course, we got Rob Ripa. So thanks, guys. And for you guys that are in America, appreciate. I hope you had a good Turkey Day, man. I started watching a little bit of the Mystery Science Theater Turkey special. Then I got on YouTube and I found the Garfield Turkey special from the 80s. One where he's Garfield's very salty in that his owner John, he really goes after his manhood. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. When he's shaving, he's like, you call yourself a man or something. I remember when I remember being like 14, being like, damn, that was cold, But so I paid a little bit more money than I usually do for a comic because I had to get this one. There's only really 2 issues of American Splendor that I want to get. This one for a reason. 2 reasons, and then the one where he did the phone book philosophical essay where he's like, what's in a name? My name's Harvey P. Carr. I looked in the phone book and I found 3 other Harvey P. Carrs. Over the years, I had people calling me up saying, sorry about your dad dying, but it was another Harvey P. Carr. Then I started wondering how these Harvey P. Carrs were doing. I love that. It's in the American Splendor movie. But this one, it's because Alan Moore actually did a little, I think it was about a 4 to 6 panel comic strip with Harvey P. Carr. And it's got the story where Harvey P. Carr talks to a comic book shop owner who either is going to court or had been to court for selling obscene material in the town of Cleveland called comic books. He'd been brought up on obscenity charges, and Harvey P. Carr put his little story. And I didn't realize American Splendor only came out once a year. I thought it was just sporadic. Maybe 2 a year, skip a year. I didn't know it was exactly 1 year at a time.
I did not know that either.
Yeah. Well, when I went to put it in my CLZ app, it had the dates that it came out or something like that. And it was showing once a year. So this is American Splendor number 15. And I got it simply because Alan Moore doesn't write, but he actually draws in it. Alan Moore started out trying to draw in comics and moved on to writing.
I remember seeing some of his early drawings. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember the cat. Yeah, the cat. I can't remember the name. And I saw some of the strips. The cat was like smacking around a tin can and stuff. I don't know, man. Underground roots. So, what you got to show, Jared? You got your stack out, or?
I got my stack out. Let's see what I got here. Haven't read this one. The first thing I got is Monstrous Talk Stories. This is not the regular Monstrous series. It's done by the same regular Monstrous people. What's their names? Marjorie Liu and Sana Takeda. But they just, I guess they go on. I never notice when my comics go on hiatus, just because I've been an indie collector for so long that it's like, they come and they go. Yeah. Right. I don't pay that much attention. If one doesn't show up in my pull list, I don't get one. When it shows up in my pull list, I get it. But I got to put this on my pull list because they just decided they want to tell a backstory of one of the characters in their hiatus. So I guess they're usually on hiatus this time of year. But they decided, let's make a 2-issue backstory before we get back to the regular series. So I thought, I haven't read it yet, so I assume it's going to be as good as the regular series because it's done by the exact same people. So, how can it be? It's not like, some series, they go on hiatus and they bring a new artist in to do some stuff. This is the same artist and the same writer. So it's another issue of Monstrous. Then I got Savage Dragon. What is this? 254. And what's interesting about this, but besides the comic itself, which I enjoyed, in the back, I guess Savage Dragon's having a little bit of a renaissance. Because he said in the back here, where is it? He usually has a little blurb. And he said, "Welcome to Savage Dragon 254. Things have been having great runs of late. Savage Dragon 250, 252, and 253 have all gone back to print due to high demand, and the back issue prices of Savage Dragon issues post 200 or so all seem to have gone through the roof. Sales are on the rise and life is good. In any case, here's the mail." But that's the first time I've heard of a rise in Savage Dragon sales in a long time.
If I had to guess, and it's nothing but a guess, and it may not be, but I remember there for a little bit, whenever some of these image books would go up and down, it's because of one series would go, get a little bit hot, and then people would see the advertisements. Now that's feedback I would get. And Spawn got a bit of a renaissance, itself, because he put a 10-gallon hat on Spawn on a cover. He came up with a Jeepers Creepers Western Spawn or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whenever that happens, maybe I don't know. Maybe that.
I think 250 got him some attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that comic strip one got him some attention.
I bet the comic strip is what pushed it. If I had to guess.
The comic strip one went back to print, so I know that was the first of, and that was a really good issue too. That was really well done.
Awesome.
And I think those two got. Then we got some reprints. This is the Spidey. What is it? 194. 194. The first Black Cat.
I think I ordered that one. I went ahead and it's taken me so long to get enough comics to get free shipping through my online store that I went ahead Monday and just send them to me. And I think that might be in it.
I actually read this one. It was solidly okay. I have the original still somewhere in my shelf from my childhood.
That is the book. That is the book that it really amazed me when I found other people with sort of the same opinion. So I've sort of molded what I was thinking with what people thought. But that was actually the start of a little bit of a decline with Peter Parker over the years, because that's where it went from Black Cat came in. The Black Cat had a thing about having Spider-Man and Peter Parker be separate, when actually Spider-Man was nothing but Peter Parker being free with his personality and getting confidence. It was the same person.
I don't know about
it. Still took a while. It was another 4 years or so.
Yeah.
Before Peter told Felicia his secret identity.
Yeah.
I remember because I actually have that cover Brazilian edition, the Spider-Man number 14 from Editora Abril, and it was only in the 50s that Peter told Felicia his secret identity, and she didn't really care for it.
No.
There's a daydream story where she imagines that Spider-Man is actually Cary Grant.
I don't think there was a decline in Spider-Man, because I don't think Spider-Man was very good when I was a kid. I mean, I bought it.
It's where they changed the formula a little bit.
I bought it around I started buying it off the racks around issue 165.
Yeah.
And probably kept buying it till like 250 maybe. And it was never that good. It just, when I finally went back when I was about 10 and read the Steve Ditko issues, I was like, oh wow, this is why everybody loves Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Because I can remember I was 10 buying Spider-Man off the racks. And to me, it was just another comic. It was okay, but it wasn't never one of my favorites. And but he was beloved, and you could tell he was beloved. And I never got why Spider-Man was beloved until I got those pocket editions of the Steve Ditko stuff, and I really liked them. Yeah. I was like, wow, now I understand why people love Spider-Man, because of the past.
Yeah, I think there was a period when Spectacular was better than Amazing. What I remember, that Amazing was better with Roger Stern writing than Marv Wolfman. But Marv Wolfman had better art because Stern had a still early career Romita Jr. Right. and Wolfman had Keith Pollard.
Yeah.
Right.
If I remember right, what happened was Roger Stern was on Spectacular Spider-Man, and
Yeah, and they moved him.
and people were noticing it was better than Amazing. He comes over to Amazing Spider-Man, and that's when he started really acknowledging that Spider-Man is a lot more powerful than people think, if that's a good way to put it. And that's why he stuck him against the Juggernaut.
Mhm.
So Roger Stern, I'm positive that was Roger Stern and not David Michelny. I mean, I'm shooting off the hip.
Yeah, I don't remember.
But
that stuff was solid.
Yeah.
All
And I
that stuff
think
was solid.
after Roger Stern came to Falco, and Roger Stern was plotting some of those for DeFalco, and he got right in on the beginning of the alien costume. So the early 80s with Spider-Man, or late 70s, early 80s, Spectacular for a while was the place to be until the 230s of
Do you remember
Spider-Man.
that one really good John Byrne issue of Spectacular?
I don't
John
think so.
Byrne was supposed to take over Spectacular Spider-Man, but he only did one issue where he fought, who was it? The Ringer.
Really? No,
And it
I
was
don't
a
remember.
really good issue. Then it was just like, that's it. I was like, all right, no John Byrne here. But I was like, it would have been really cool if Byrne took over
Yeah.
Spectacular. It would have been really good. Just like that one house ad we got for Frank Miller's Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
Do you remember
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, and not only do I remember that, but a lot of other people who were actually there remember that. That is the one thing that I haven't seen people later on talk about. The people that were there remember that. So yeah.
Right. I remember seeing that ad and going, "Oh, cool! Frank Miller doing Doctor Strange." Had a really cool full-page illustration, and then it just never happened.
Speaking of semi-obscure house ads, there was a house ad for DC's Shadow. And the house ad was not done by Kaluta. The actual ad was done by Bernie Wrightson.
Yeah.
I don't know what the significance of this one is to their latest. What is it? King in Black. It says Iron Man, Doctor Doom. I still have the original of this somewhere, but I felt like getting another fresh copy for $1. And it's continued into 150, so it's only like half a story. I remember really liking 150, but I haven't read it in 30 years. So
yeah, I think I have like the Iron Man versus Hulk, and then all of a sudden I jump up to that 2-part story in my collection.
I think it's ETA Nick commissioned Bob Layton to do a recreation of the cover of 150. This is 149, so it's not this one. But he had him he commissioned a cover of that. I thought it was pretty cool. Yeah, Spawn and Dragon have been around so long that they're a nostalgia act for something.
That makes me feel old because I remember before either one of those books ever came out.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, Spawn, I mean, Savage Dragon is such not a nostalgia act too, because the original Savage Dragon isn't even in there.
Well, my Savage Dragon sort of, for me, ended with that Savage World in the 80s to the 100 issues, 100. And I'm actually backing up, and I pulled those out of this for sale pile because I have one of the trades, and they never did the second trade finishing the story that I can find. So, Savage Dragon, it's funny that he's getting hot again because, I'm decided I'm going to get the rest of those Savage World books. It's Commandy, man. It's a Commandy takeoff,
Though he did just bring back the original Savage Dragon.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because what he did, I think around issue 223 to 225, if I remember the editor's note from this last issue, he merged all the alternate worlds. So all the alternate worlds that existed in the Savage Dragon world merged into one. And all the people merged into one. So they have memories from other worlds, but everything's kind of hazy. They don't quite know what's going on. And he just had, I think it was issue 250, he had pop up the Savage Dragon from the original miniseries when he was in high school or whatever, who had the little fin on his head.
Mm-hmm.
And he just showed up, and he's just looking for friends or family or something because because nobody remembers him. And he's just he's like trying to find his, and he's just like a sub character in this series so far. And he's just like, dude, you don't remember me? And he was like merged with another guy and then split up, and this stuff happened. And he's going to all these, like two guys were his sons, and then back in his world, they don't even know him now, and he's just like, oh man, like for 5 issues, he's just been trying to find a friend, and he can't. It's really sad.
You're way too deep into comic book lore sometimes, and it's time to back up because Savage Dragon makes me think of him and Wolverine for the stupidest reason that I acknowledge. It's a little pet peeve. Savage Dragon was only like 5'8" or 6 foot. He was he was so much he was kind of short, and the fin made him look taller. And I noticed Larson kind of drew him bigger than some other characters. You know, not a big deal. Right. But you have Wolverine who started out like at 5 foot. And people have gradually made him like 6'2" over 30 years. You know,
yeah. Everybody got tall, but the Hulk's like 25 feet tall now, and the Thing was supposed to be like 5'8", and he's like 25 feet tall now.
When I saw a video from Glenn Danzig like in 88, and saw that, you know, he like bulked up and he looked like a little guy, I'm like, that's Wolverine, you know.
Yeah, there were a lot of people back then that commented on that.
Yeah, Zeitgeist. Everybody who knew anything saw that, and everybody, yeah.
Sleepy Reader says the J.R. Jr. art doesn't stand up to my memories. Okay, well he's changed a lot.
Well,
since his Spider-Man days. Who was inking on that?
I saw a documentary that Jr. Huh?
It varies. I know that that his dad inked them in some issues. Jim Mooney.
Okay. Because his Iron Man stuff looked really slick because Layton was inking.
Yeah. Layton was practically redrawing everything.
Yeah.
I saw a documentary. Who knows which one it was? But you know, JR was still at Marvel when this documentary came out. And he was talking about when he first got in there. Then they switched over to like John Romita Sr. or some editor or somebody who was sitting there going, the kid wants to work. I don't care about nepotism, neo-nepotism, anti-nepotism. The kid wants to work. And his dad kept his mouth shut. And then JR said that some of his stuff would come back and he'd call his dad up and be like, so how did this get fixed, Dad? You know, and he was like, yeah, I fixed it for you. I want you to, you know, trying to help you out there a little bit. So his earlier stuff that Sleep Reader's talking about may have been redone by his dad.
This is another reprint. This is the latest Usagi series to be recolored. So this is from the 80s. I look forward to it. I wonder if I'm not sure how many. The first one, the Usagi Yojimbo Color Classics, was 7 issues. I don't know how many issues, but I guess they're just gonna. I guess they're coloring them ahead of the trades and putting them out as comics. So I guess whatever issues are in the trade is going to be in this series.
Wanderer's Road. That story arc they're doing there, they've got different cover artists too.
Oh, okay. And
I'm like, something about that just doesn't look right. It should be a Stan Sakai cover.
Yeah, there's this is Peach Momoko.
Right.
Well, a Bleeding Cool article showed up on my Google feed of all places when I was trying to search some Punisher stuff last night, and there's an article about whoever is coloring Usagi is retiring. Like this is some of his last work.
Yeah, Tom Leaf. He's already retired. He's still got
some obligation.
He's under contract to do 2 more Gru series for Dark Horse.
Right.
Yeah, he's already stopped.
Tommy likes Ron Friends and Spider-Man.
I was just about to hit that. Yeah, Ron Friends. Yeah, that was the time where you had like the Fox and then the first appearance of Silver Sable, I think. But I got quite Ron. I was in the hospital getting my appendix took out when I got handed a whole bunch of Spider-Man comics that people went out and bought for me while I was in the hospital, and it was the Ron Friends era there. So yeah.
And then we've got the latest Cerebus, which is Spider Whore. And I'll tell you, the sales on this book are completely dependent on the covers. Because he now puts the print run on the front cover. And this one got a print run of 24.4. This is 1709 out of 24.14. I think it's strange to have no Sakai cover. Yeah, that is a little weird. But it's like 2,400 is like 1,000 more than some of his issues he's had lately.
Ouch.
And I know the Batvark penis is actually going back to print. They're going to have a second. That's the first time they're having a second print of one.
It's like Viagra.
So it's like if this is a completely people buy this just for the covers.
And I think
No.
Sim being Sim is making a point here. Number ones,
Yeah.
everyone's a number one. Now he's proven it's a cover.
Right.
You know, he knows
Yeah.
what he's trying to say something, and people are proving him right. You know,
Right. And he's also said he's now a nostalgia act. He's now resigned to the fact that he's a nostalgia act since he couldn't sell Strange Death of Alex Raymond. He's like,
I was actually going to ask about that. Yeah, I saw a panel pop up where he's trying to show how Alex Raymond may have done a straight line with his inking, and I'm like, what is this? Did that ever even come to fruition? Is it out there?
What's weird is he can't draw anymore. He in Glamour Puss he started doing the Strange Death of Alex Raymond, and it's really good. I love it. Because it's he goes into such minutia of comics history. You'd love it too, since you love comics history.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know. That's a good question. How much could he make on? I'm guessing he could make $1 an issue. Because what is it? Comic shops get it around 60% cover price. So that drops you down to what, less than $2, and the distributor doesn't take half of that. I'm guessing he can make $1. $1 an issue maybe would be a lot.
But at the same time, you got to remember, it's not original art. You know,
right.
Yeah, he's not really drawing anything.
But still, that's the only thing he's got. I mean, he could draw it. He would draw it. I don't think that's because it's his labor no matter what. But anyway, Strange Death of Alice Raymond. So he started working with another artist on Strange Death of Alex Raymond. And then they got volume 1 done at TPB. And I think I don't know if they tried to kickstart it or they did a special California limited release where they printed up some copies for a bunch of California comic shops. And I think it just didn't sell. He just went, there's no point in me doing this. It's taking all my energy and I'm not making any money out of it.
Okay.
But he gave his blessing to the people he was working with to do it themselves.
I think I saw him mention that on his YouTube channel. That sounds familiar.
Yeah.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah, printing and postage and storage costs must chisel it down. I don't think there's any storage costs, only because they print to order and there's nothing to store.
And I mean, you know, if you're only printing 2,400 copies,
yeah,
you can.
Yeah, I don't think. But you're printing and postage doesn't need it because it's all through Diamond. But yeah, for the graphic novel, it must eat it up because that's not all that they have to have shipped to them.
If
that's
Sim,
right.
I think if Sim wants a hit, and I'm not saying it'd be a something that would be sustained over months, it'd be more like a stunt. If he wanted something that really popped, he'd have to get back with Gerhard for something.
I don't know if that'll even do it.
I think Gerhard's got a little bit of a following and stuff. I mean, granted,
I don't think he's got a bigger following than Dave Sim, and he doesn't have that big a following these days.
Not these days, no.
Okay. I don't know.
And then I picked up a first issue this week. Be interested to hear what Sleepy thought about this one because I'm iffy on it. I Walk with Monsters. 6-issue series it's supposed to be. They've got a new horror imprint. This is from Vault. Nightfall is the name of their horror imprint. They got a little thing over here. I like the subtlety of their pseudo spine thing here. It just says Nightfall and the price and the Vault Comics, and I like that better than a big banner across the.
It's like a 80-page giant or 100-page giant from the 70s of DC folding over. You know,
yeah, that's what it's like.
Yeah.
This is a story of a woman who hunts serial killers by using herself as bait, and then she's got a friend who's a monster who then eats them.
It's Stanley and his monster 2020.
On the ape.
Yeah, Angel in the Eight.
problem-
There we go. That's even better. Angel in the
The
Eight.
problem I had with it is, Sleepy hasn't read it yet. I kind of enjoyed it, but I once heard this description that has always stuck with me of hard boiled. When someone says it's 8 pages of story packed into a 24-page issue. And that's kind of like what this was for me. There was a lot of air. It wasn't bad. There was just a lot of air to it. And there was a lot of flashbacks to her childhood explaining why she's hunting serial killers. She came from a bad place. I really didn't, and it was especially funny reading this issue of Spider-Man right after I read this issue of I Walk with Monsters, because this issue of Spider-Man has about 48 pages of plot in this 22-page story. I mean, there's more. There's like more plot and characterization in these 2 pages than there is in 8 pages of this.
Yep.
And that doesn't mean this is bad. It's just like I'm just like I need a little more.
Substance, co-plot, mood, tension. I can go on and on and on. What's probably missing from that? You know what I mean? It's just a straightforward fantasy of somebody doing a comic where they're projecting themselves as I'm getting the picture here. It's thin. It's a thin story.
Yeah, and it's nice. I mean, I liked the art. The storytelling wasn't terrible or anything. It was just very thin. And I'd like to read more of it, but I have to say to myself, do I want to pay another $30 for 5 more issues? I don't think so. But I'm going to give it one more read. I'm going to give it one more read.
They need somebody to come in that's got a writing background to help frame it and add some stuff to it. Because, I mean, the concept's awesome. And I love Scott, man. I'm sure you're going Stanley and his monster is a joke. And he nailed Angel and the Ape. I heard you that time, man.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You're talking about wanting to pay more. I saw I think it was a mock-up of a cover that's coming out for a new issue of Heavy Metal Magazine, which had Frazetta on the cover, and the cover price was $13.99.
Whoa.
And I was like, ouch. You know?
And then the last thing I got was the new issue of Love and Rockets.
Nice.
Which is always good.
11 Rocks is remind me, it happens in real time. Like the books that came out in 1980 were set in or whatever it was in the early 80s was set in the 80s. So this is 2020, you know.
Yeah, as much as I love these issues of Love and Rockets, if you're going to read Love and Rockets, you may as well pick up the collected editions.
Okay.
You know, just because they've got giant volume, they've got Locust Volume 1 and 2 by Jaime and Luba by Gilbert. They're both good. Because this is like, you get little stories in this that really don't. But no, it's funny. I was just like this week, I saw this was coming out. I'm like, oh, I haven't read the issue before it twice. It's been sitting on top of my printer for like 8 months. So I'm like, you know what? Let me read issue 8 before issue 9 comes in. I'll read it again.
Scott,
and there was something.
There
was something Beto did in issue 8 that I'd forgotten about, and it just creeped me out and stuck with me.
Yeah, I think Scott and I've already told the story about how in Charlotte we were in the hotel lobby and they had like a little restaurant bar section, and we'd already seen the Hernandez brothers there, you know, in line or I did or something. And we turned around, they were just sitting with their crew there hanging out. I just didn't feel like hanging out with a bunch of people bullshitting and saying horrible things, acting like you're self-important. So we went back up to the room. So,
yeah.
Is that how it went, Scott? I think we went to bed and got up.
We went to the art auction.
That's it.
And it was either it was too hot in there or I didn't feel good or something like that. I just wanted to get the hell out of there. There's too many people in there.
It was packed along the walls, out in the hallways, in the seats. The body heat from those people had it at least 110 degrees in there. I'm not exaggerating. The humidity and BO.
It was really humid.
Yeah, there we go.
Well, Beto did this story, you know, just with his characters. And there's some sub characters and things going on. He's always got plots going on. But in this one plot, these 3 people befriended these 2 people. And then took them out to the woods and splashed acid on their faces and killed them to steal their money. And it was just like such a gruesome death. I was just like, oh man, because it was like, they sprayed acid all over the face, and the people would just run around for a few minutes and fall down and die. And I was just like, oh my God, this is gruesome. And for some reason, that just really stuck with me this time reading it. I was like, oh my, those poor people, those gruesome deaths.
That reminds me
of the people doing the killing were just like, now we'll go and get the money. Yay! They didn't even care.
When I was in college, I had a philosophy class at 8 a.m., and that's kind of what that felt like.
I just, it has nothing to do with comics. I'm remembering, Scott, that was the year that due to so many people being in that hotel for Heroes Con, that I couldn't get a spare blanket. So that's when I slept on the chair in the ottoman, and I had 2 towels on me for.
I remember you sleeping. Yeah, I remember you sleeping on the chair,
and I had 2 towels to stay warm. I'm like, these are really good towels, damn. But sorry, sorry, man. I went
that certain things trigger memories. Human memory is a weird thing.
Yeah. Yep. Sorry, Jared, man. I just had a moment there. I feel like getting a towel. Yeah, it's where Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was right. Don't forget your towel, And
I just saw a post. I forgot this week. Mike Hobson, who probably no one in the public knows, and I don't really know him either. But he was like a vice president at Marvel that everybody loved in like the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
You may have seen his name in indicias and stuff. Mike Hobson.
Yeah, I remember his name, and Shooter talks about him in his blog because. Hobson came from children's publishing or something before he moved to Marvel.
I've just noticed him showing up a lot this week in my Facebook. But like I said, I didn't know him at all when I was there, even though he was there at the same time, because that most of the editors and stuff knew him. But they all say nice things about him, which is kind of rare in comics.
Especially about an executive that comes from outside the industry.
Yeah.
Of course, the executives from inside the industry were no more trustworthy.
Speaking of such things, I was watching a YouTube video yesterday, actually, that had a panel discussion at some art conference. It had Bill Sienkiewicz and Howard Chaykin.
Oh, that was a class,
right?
That was what's his name's class.
Okay, but it was really interesting watching this just to figure out, because Chaykin was talking about like how certain art editors really hated each other.
Oh yeah.
I didn't, and I had no idea that such and such, and it was like, wow, they were like, pretty bitter enemies.
I listened to about half of that. I wish it was mic'd better. It was one of those things where about every 4th word sounded like it was underwater.
The one I listened to, it didn't seem like it had any audio problems. It sounded
I listened to the link you gave me, so it had to be the same one.
Yeah.
Were you listening to it on headphones?
Yes.
That's probably why you understood it better.
Right. Plus, I wasn't watching the video. I was just listening to the audio. Right?
Yeah, I was just listening to the audio, too. There wasn't any video to watch. It was just
the video,
a slideshow of their work.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting to listen to that. It's like,
Howard Chaykin especially is an interesting guy. He can
that's
talk.
One thing I was going to bring up, because sometimes when I read print interviews with Chaykin, those can come off without the vocal context of things he's saying. Those can come off sometimes as little, I don't know, brash or arrogant or confrontational.
Oh, he comes off that way in real life too.
Well, somewhat, but listening to him actually speak was a whole different tone on it.
Did you listen to the kayfabe interview with him?
Not yet. I have a
check that one out. That one's really good.
Kayfabe videos on the watch later list.
Yeah, I can't keep up with their videos. They make too many of them. But I watched the Howard Chaykin interview.
I put them on there if it's a subject or a person I'm interested in. If it's something I'm not interested in, I usually skip it.
If I remember right, the kayfabe Chaykin video is good because they go, yes, sir, no, sir, and they keep their mouth shut. And
right. That's what makes it. Chaykin was doing all the talking. 30
minutes at a time, they'll pop up, yes, sir, no, sir, and then he keeps talking. And he's walking around his apartment or something, showing off stuff.
Right.
Yeah. The reason, another reason I don't watch a lot of kayfabe videos too is I don't think they have particularly good insight on a lot of stuff. Sometimes they do, but we've had those same conversations better.
Okay,
a lot of time, and I certainly have. So
this is why I like YouTube. What you just said is documented here on this show in the videos, and then we go way back to when this community first started over the years. It's I can't hang in there because they're doing stuff that we've already done, and people haven't seen that that weren't here 6-7 years ago.
True. And I guess in that regard, if you think about it, those would be the equivalent of like an audio reaction video from somebody else.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, granted, it's their first time discovering it, so it's just kind of cool to see somebody else excited about something.
Yeah.
They're not bad or anything like that. I just have a tough time finding ones I'm interested in. Sometimes I do.
I got you.
I watched a few with Tom Scioli on there, but he wasn't saying anything that he wasn't saying anything that we hadn't said before.
Right.
But it was like The Dark Knight Returns, and he was trying to get into how sexual the fight was with the Joker and The Dark Knight was. And there's a few things that I get where he was saying, but it was a little bit of a reach when it came to like what it really meant when Batman spit on his face. And I'm like, it's not what Batman's doing. It's disgust, not sexual. I'm like,
Yeah. Sleepy Reader says kayfabe gets all the credit now. Yeah, they do. That's because they're.
I actually remember the reason I got into them was because of the Wizard videos, and I think they're mostly a nostalgia channel, but they're nostalgic about obscure stuff. Instead of what everybody read, it's just stuff that only they have heard about.
That's just the stuff isn't obscure to me and Tim.
Well, I assume both those guys are probably in their 30s.
Yeah.
So
no, they're in their 40s.
Okay,
they're at least 10 years younger than me.
Right. So
they grew up in the 90s. Comics were their comics. So.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't watched the kayfabe video probably since that Chaykin one. And then before that, they had Scioli on. So I've only watched a handful. But I had tons of people tell me to check them out. And when I did, I was just like, we've done this,
Yeah, so, I think the most interesting interview that they've done is with Tim Vigil.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll have to check that one out.
I want to take a moment here with Sleepy Reader here. He's traumatized over the Ramones hating each other. I gotta look at the autobiography over here that I have where I found that out to see what year it was. But 17 years of Johnny and Joey not talking to each other amazed me. Wow. Finding out that Johnny didn't like CJ Ramone, because CJ was like, it's not that he didn't like me, he just didn't understand me. I was too young.
And I can't remember which of the two it was, but one stole the other one's girlfriend, then didn't talk to him for 15 years.
Johnny Ramone. Yeah, that's where the KKK took my baby away came from. Joey was waiting for his girlfriend to come meet him. She ran off with Johnny. A couple years later, they got married. So there was more to it than just a little affair. And Joey had OCD before anybody knew that it was a disease, if you will. So when he gets a grudge, it's forever,
But some of the stuff that went on between the band members is just like, damn, guys, that's ouch,
Yeah. All right. Well, we mentioned a Wizard a minute ago, and again, not busting on a kayfabe or nothing, but we've done the Wizard magazine in this community years ago. It went nowhere. Everybody remembered Wizard, talked about it. They would show an issue or two, but I've got a few here in what we were talking about.
Yeah.
And
they've also been showing a couple of Hero Illustrateds.
Yeah. Those are always kind of mentioned and stuff. But I've got one here that got me distracted. I'm looking for an article. Somebody on the internet has to really get down to it and do like a bibliography of Wizard magazines with what's in each issue. So I'm tracking it down. I got it down
out there.
Yeah, well, I think it's on like mycomicshop.com if you want to order Wizards. It kind of runs through some of them.
The Grand Comics database has been trying to avoid doing that. The thing is, it often comes. I mean, there are mailing lists, and it often comes up that they want to start adding to the database stuff about comics,
right?
Which would include books and magazines, and the older guys are kind of. We don't really want to do that because it kind of changes. Because as long as they focus on comic books, it's like this is the purpose. But I really don't see the problem with them adding books about comics, especially because there's some magazines who have already slipped through the cracks.
Yeah.
One of the things about DCDB that drives me nuts sometimes is when they do have either mostly magazines about comics, they will never include the cover art scans because
No, they can.
they have a policy that if it's under a certain percentage of actual comics, that they won't.
No, they already changed that policy. They can they can have the cover even if it's only 10% comics.
But I mean, even that is like what it just seems stupid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to have this, you know, certain.
I didn't even know they had policies.
To have this certain magical
They
percentage
do.
number that said no, we're not going to, you know, archive the cover. I'm like, why?
The thing is, they have policies that they've done a complete 180 on that policy and then gone back to the original one.
It would be like going to a library and checking out a reference book and discovered somebody had cut out all the cover images. You know,
I'm just glad Jared started smiling and looking because he started looking uncomfortable, and I saw this stern look on his face. I'm like, "What's he doing?" You know, it's like there he goes. He's doing it again. There it is.
I was like, Grand Comic Book Database policies? I didn't know such a thing existed.
Oh, yeah.
No, you got to be on their mailing list. They talk about the most boring stuff in there.
But like I submitted some information about one thing, and you have to dot all your I's and cross all your T's.
Yeah, they have a wiki for that.
Not only did these two guys know that the Grand Comic Database has policies, they have opinions on the policies.
I have opinions on the policies. It's a rabbit hole.
I have them on Facebook, and they might post once a month that I see. You know,
having said that, it is an extremely valuable resource.
Yeah,
yeah. I go on there all the time and look stuff up. I never once thought about their policies.
I didn't think about looking them up on Comic Book Realm. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Dennis Hayes. Yes. Oh, and Gore Vidal has popped in. He sent me a message. He commented or sent a message or something saying if he didn't pop in, he wants everybody to have a happy Thanksgiving there. So thank you. Same to you, man. Thanks to you.
And the big thing in my feed this weekend, of course, was: has anybody watched that new Marvel 616 documentary on Netflix?
All I'm saying is I was proven right about Slot, but but that's not where you're going. Wait till everybody hears this one about Mr. Osborn. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just in the background of one of them. I was just – it actually, per our discussion last week about DC and what's going to happen to it and if Marvel is going to last, first of all, I didn't watch the documentaries, but I scrubbed through them to find the pictures of people who I worked with in there and posted them all on Facebook and annotated them.
Right.
So I didn't, just because I do not like that kind of marketing, oh, we're Marvel, aren't we great sort of documentary. It just holds no interest for me. But it actually made me feel good to know it exists. Only because it lets me know that Disney cares somewhat about Marvel. See, we don't know yet if AT&T cares about DC at all. But Marvel
know that they don't.
But Marvel has found their place within Disney.
Disney lost $9 billion this year.
But if Disney bothers to spend money on a 8 1-hour documentary episodes on Marvel, which is really all marketing, then Marvel has a place there. They're not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was easier. When they bought Marvel, they immediately started making money off of the movies.
Yes.
So they've become an integral part of the business.
They weren't. Remember, Disney wasn't $150 billion in debt at the time.
Yeah.
Plus, the Marvel movies caught their attention. They were already being made before Disney came on. People were worried, what will Disney mess them up? You know,
right?
People need to remember that. You know,
well, like though
they did mess them up, but their lowest common denominator. But it works for the type of audience that they want to attract.
Yeah, even like I said, even though it doesn't bode very well for me liking their comics, which I don't already. I was glad to see, I was like, Marvel's not going anywhere if Disney's making 8-part documentary episodes about them. They're just not. They found their place within the Disney corporate hierarchy. It might not be to make good comics. The Marvel we knew of the 60s, 70s is never coming back. It's just not. It's just never coming back. They're now a corporate entity. They make corporate comics that are not edgy in the least, that are there to be product and are there to be merchandised. But I'm the odds of me liking their comics are very slim. But at least they're going to be there.
Right.
Yeah, and I hate they didn't kind of tap you a little bit because you took screenshots and didn't you expand on the screenshots? So it'd been nice to get more people like you in there. I think I didn't watch them, but what I was going to show is due to our heated conversation about Slot there, I had 10 people message me about the Slot episode before people started making the videos on YouTube that I saw, and I don't believe reality TV is reality. My survival shows broke my heart when I found out these guys were sleeping in lodges and not really making their homes in the snow at night, so maybe it was a dramatic effect and stuff like that. But wow, all I'm going to say is that one episode, I was just sort of like, holy crap.
I'm going to have to watch it myself because the people I've heard complaining about it are like EVS and his hyperbole. So I'm like, I have no idea what it's really like.
I looked up, I actually found some of just the clips of the show that they were talking
I want to watch
I
want to watch the show itself, though, not just clips, because you can take clips out of context.
I want to spend my $6 for Disney Plus when they finish the Mandalorian, so I can binge them, and then I might try to watch that. I'm so past the current Marvel that I really don't know if it'll hold my interest.
That's right. It's on Disney Plus, not Netflix. I was confused.
Disney Plus. Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. I bet this is about Slot. Hold on. You hear my phone?
But one thing I also thought about that I didn't think about until after our conversation last week about DC and if they'll find their place with AT&T or not, which Paolo says not. But
they are having a really hard time getting the movies to work, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah. That's such an edge for Marvel Comics is Kevin Feige got the movies to work. I mean, that just really made the difference. But there's also there's something I had never thought about before, and that is having let's just say having like 50,000 fans. Let's just give them that number. DC Comics fans online talking about DC Comics or Marvel, whichever, is invaluable. You can't imagine having to imagine if you were a company and you want attention, especially in this, world we live in now with social media. Having 50,000 fans for free go online and talk about your product is something that would cost you. I don't even know if you could buy that.
They've been getting told this for 5 to 10 years. Yeah.
So if AT&T had a brain in their head, they'd see the value in that. But I don't know if they have. Once again, we don't know. We don't know if they have a brain in their head.
Well, I can imagine that it costs. It's about $1 million of free advertising.
Oh, I think it's more than that. I think it's way more than that. Because here we are talking about DC Comics for free, and we're just 4 people.
Yeah, the thing, there's a.
If you're a comics fan, you talk about comics.
Sure, but there's a metric to advertising. And so you know that the advertising on the internet is very cheap. It's actually kind of ridiculous because. Advertising on the internet is still cheaper than advertising on the newspaper, even though right now the newspaper has a lower reach.
But
that's why I said 1 million.
Right. But you do that advertising to try and get people to talk about your stuff.
Yeah.
They already have people talking about their stuff. That's what's how much money would it cost to get 1,000 people to talk about your stuff?
Here's what I've seen. Even these YouTube channels going way back, and there's comic book channels that all of us have never heard of. There's a bunch out there you run across.
Right.
And over the years, but one of the things that started out as a joke, and then I've started meeting people who are saying they were doing it. Well, let me break it down. First of all, you get an article like from Bleeding Cool or something, CBR, right? And then that gets people's interest. They'll talk about a book. They'll jump over to people jump on eBay. Bleeding Cool has reached a point where they talk about what's a hot book on eBay. Then you have people doing the channel where they just pull up the video, the article, and they do a whole video on the article talking about it. And then that spreads if it gets hits and other people do it. There's no doubt in my mind that these YouTube videos play a big part in eBay prices and getting the news out on the new books and on the articles. It all works together. It's not just one thing. You follow what I'm saying?
And those are also just the people trying to get views. We don't even try and get views. We just like coming on here and talking.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people like that too.
But
so what was that?
Oh, I was going to say Sleepy Reader, if he's out there, he might remember this and stuff. But I think it was a guy named Oddfellow Thoughts. He said it and it started out as a joke. And then it actually, some stuff happened online that made it credible. But we drove the back issue prices of Commandy way up just on our videos all the way up to about 2004. Now, that was a 3-year process. People would make new videos. Me or Constant Bromstar would talk about Jack Kirby's Commandy. Then everybody would start showing their number one or start getting back issues. Oddfellow Thoughts starts complaining, and like I said, it was a joking manner that he's like, "You guys, I can't get these things affordable anymore," and stuff like that. And then people would start trying to get their Commandy number one to validate themselves or whatever to act like they're joining a club. These YouTube videos drove up the Jack Kirby Commandy, and there's no doubt in my mind about it. You know,
to make a military analogy, I think individual comic fans are kind of unimportant in our society. They just are. But I think comics fans as a whole are what the military calls force multipliers, where you drop in, they're the highly trained Navy SEALs who you drop in 12 of them behind the lines and they train 100 partisans. I think comic book fans, I'm not trying to say the comic book fans are important on their own, but I think comic book fans on the internet are force multipliers because they always talk about comic books. So any random comic book fan can reach 10 normal people. They might pay absolutely no attention to them, or they might not, or they might or might not. But I think I think part of the success of the movies is the passion of comic book fans talking about them.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
If they were bad movies, it wouldn't matter. But they also kill some bad movies too. I think comic book fans are that they punch above their class on social media.
The quality of the movies, of these movies and the Marvel movies, are tight, well acted, great. You know what I mean? They're together. They led up to something. And 5 or 6 years ago, I would have done a whole video on doing this, but I'm not that guy anymore. But like you're talking about touching on what you said about the internet and the people talking about comics and what you were saying to bounce off that. I think it's great. I love having a comic book in my collection that I've drug around in a box or something for 30 years, and all of a sudden it pops because of a TV or a show or a movie or something. But I'm a little concerned about books like Darkhawk and Sleepy Reader. It smell the quality. Sleepy Reader. I'm sorry, Sleepwalker. Wow. But anyway,
well, they're all confused for each other. So.
Well, yeah, Sleepwalker and Darkhawk and books like that, lower quality books that are it smells of desperation for people to have a key book. You follow what I'm saying?
I wouldn't call it desperation. I'd just say collectors need something to collect. Yeah,
the quality for some of these books aren't there. And for me, that's why I'm saying I would have done a whole video on this, expanding on it. But the bottom line is somebody gets that book and they read it and they think it's crap. All of a sudden they're not into the comics and having a sustainability of getting more comics and influencing people. Now they're
Good for us, they're not
this is
reading.
a hot book. This is a hot book and it sucks. So I'm not going to waste my money. I'm going to spend my money just getting key books. That doesn't really help the hobby, you know.
No, I think collectors need something. There are plenty of collectors who don't read their books. They just need something to collect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's all.
Although
it
I
is.
imagine that it's probably more useful if the YouTubers who talk about the value of comics, if they pointed fans in the direction of sleeper hits or comics that are hidden that they should go after and that are at a relatively low price, telling people that they should stock up on Venoms because as long as Donny Cates is on the title, they're going to be worth $70 for the next 6 months. I don't think that's not useful.
Yeah.
So some do give undervalued stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But not a lot, not a lot.
All right. There's a thread here just to cover some of this real quick. The prices seem to have gone back down, talking about Commandy. New YouTube people never talk about Commandy. Scott jumped in there. I don't know how many levels of offensive I am on that one, Scott. Oh my God.
Well, he's talking about the Commandy effect, and I was thinking about the Mandela effect. And
Sleepy Reader agrees with you, Jared.
Yeah.
And then that's right, Damien. Commandy is never talked about except among people here. It's interesting how some new collectors don't become interested in comics unless a show or film is announced.
Yeah.
YouTube has driven the key issue passing in the past half decade. Now,
it sure has.
I don't mean to keep going, hey, Sleepy Reader, if you remember this, but I mean, he was there. But there was a few channels that got busted because they would come out with their big this may be why speculating became such a evil thing amongst some people, but they would get a YouTube video, talk about how rare this book is. People would run to eBay. You would find out they're the ones selling the books under 2 or 3 different accounts.
Well, I remember a story about the early 2000s when, and I think Chuck Rosansky was one of them. There were a few dealers who got together just to see if they could drive up the price of Night Nurse #1. And they did.
Yeah.
That's an actually interesting social experiment.
Yeah, they actually did. And Night Nurse #1 is still a key issue because of no one cared about it before they decided to see if they could make it a key issue.
Right. I think it's very ironic that you made a analogy using some military terminology, talk about force multipliers.
Yeah.
For a DC book, because you could call it, guerrilla warfare.
Don't laugh at him. Just don't laugh at him.
It was like a joke.
Don't laugh at him. You just encourage him.
It took 5 seconds for that one to go off in my head. All right. Geeks and nerds will hardly change, but tend to gain credibility with age.
Or
we are specialists.
Or lose it depending on how often they open their mouth with certain opinions.
Sleep Reader was on a hangout with a bunch of guys. They all wanted to talk about their trophy comics, not about interesting runs or artists or fascinating quirks or comic book history that I wanted to talk about. But now the thing is that like I'm not slamming those people that are in it for this. That's what they're doing. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think they tend to move on to something else. Games,
they do.
Trading cards.
They last 3 or 4 years and move on.
Yeah. Yeah, and they tend to repeat each other because they all want to be in the know. So if one of them says that Sleepwalker is now the thing to own, the rest of them are going to go after it as well.
Dude, there was a while there for like about 2 weeks that I know of. I stopped looking where I had video after video made against me, and I couldn't figure out why. And it was because I was the Howlerpedia. And I guess they were blaming me for their channels not getting hits because they didn't know what the hell they were talking about. That's not my fault. And that's one of the reasons I kind of backed off my YouTube channel because I started, and I hate using the word jealousy because believe me, this is a tiny YouTube channel. I'm a dude with some comments. I know there's no ego here, but I just don't understand that. But I want to throw Scott a bone here. He has a fan.
Oh, really?
Oh, no.
Broad warfare, sir.
We don't need any more punning.
Yeah. By the way,
I don't know-
I
I don't know if
want to ask Damien if it was his friends Bueller and Bob. 'Cause-
I can't figure out.
I'm still subscribed to comics with Bueller, but it doesn't evolve.
Bueller?
I don't begrudge those guys their interest in collecting, key books and stuff, but it's just not me.
Yeah, me neither. I
I'm
sometimes
happy for anyone.
subscribe to channels and to new channels, and when they start talking about the value of books, and I watch 2 or 3 videos, and
yeah, you can skip those ones.
See, now there's people that had channels that had a good balance, like those, like they know they love Fantastic Four. They can talk Fantastic Four and all this stuff. But then that's like that and a few other little books is really all they know. They're more into this. I get that. I totally get that. You know what I mean? Like I like this, and at least they're reading something, and they have a broad knowledge of one book, an in-depth knowledge of one book, but not a broad knowledge of comics per se. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
I can talk. We can have a conversation about Fantastic Four. I'm just using that as an example, But it's interesting to meet different collectors. But I've seen people come and go over the years.
Here's an interesting thought I had that had to do with that Disney Plus Marvel series. I think it was last winter. A couple of years ago, I had posted a video on YouTube that I edited together some footage of a Marvel Halloween. It's about 45 minutes long. It's really only interesting to people who are there. It was actually Marie Javins who took the footage sometime in like 1991 or 1992. And she had it sitting around because she always meant to edit it together. But in those days, you needed tape decks to edit stuff together. She never did. Like in 2005, she gave me the video to digitize. She's like, if you want to do something with it, go right ahead. Then it sat around on my hard drive for 10 years. Till one day, I think it was like in 2018 when I got this new iPad. It was really good for editing video. So I edited all the video together. I posted it up. I let everybody know, it was there. Like it's really only interesting if you worked in the office. Otherwise, you're looking at someone. Like I said, I edited it together to be as interesting as possible in short clips, telling a story. But really, you don't want to watch it. So cut to last winter, I think it was. I get an email from somebody saying, "Oh, we're making a documentary on Marvel. We want to know if we can use this footage. Could you please email us at whatever?" I said to myself, well, it's not my footage. It's Marie's footage. So I told her about it. I said, you can email these guys, and see what she's like, all right, I'll see what they're all about. I'll email them. She emailed them, never heard back from them. They never used that footage. If they were the same guys who made this Disney Plus one, I have no idea. But in the Disney Plus one, I also, if you remember a few years ago, this kind of got it was my most watched video. It got like 10 or 12,000 views, and I never get that many. My MTV at Marvel video, which is from back in 1992. MTV came up to Marvel for the day. They filmed us. I was in it. They filmed us. They did like a half an hour segment from Marvel, in and out. And I happened, I taped it all those years ago. And this was 4 or 5 years ago, whenever it was. I digitized the tape, posted on YouTube. Made all the comic book news. Ooh, look at this old thing that popped up. Anyway, they used some footage. They used MTV footage in the Netflix document. Only a few seconds of it, not a lot. And it got me to thinking, does MTV have an archive? Because as far as I know, I'm the only one who had tape of this and like no one who I worked with back then had tape that they saved that I know of. And it was like, and I assume that these documentary makers just like took my footage and used that because they don't need my permission to use MTV footage and they need MTV's permission. But I wonder if they could go to MTV and say, can you get us the footage from February 21st, 1992? Does MTV have that kind of archive or not? That just popped into my, I'm like,
I think they probably,
I just have no idea.
I think they probably have it, but the question is, do they have an archivist that has it all set up?
Yeah, could they find? Does a media company like that have an archive?
Most of them do.
Yeah,
They
some
must
of
have
their
some kind of archive.
documentaries, the VH1 documentaries, get rerun.
Right.
What was that?
The VH1 documentaries, they get rerun.
That's a complete documentary. This was just their VJ introducing videos.
It was kind of like a 10-minute news segment, I think.
Yeah.
They used to have news at 10 minutes to the hour.
Paolo's too young to know an MTV that used to play music.
No. I'm from MTV Music. I remember when I'm still from the day when MTV Europe was new.
I saw a graphic yesterday actually that had the MTV logo, and somebody announced, this is MTV's anniversary. It's like whatever year in the 80s it was, up until like 2020, and then down at the bottom it said thanks for 12 years of music.
You can give to the people a little. When did you put that up, Jared? Like 4 years ago, give or take.
Something like that.
Okay. Here's a little behind the scenes, a little history for people who may have been in the community for a long time. Gene Paul Ace Peter started doing, due to the trolling and all the stuff that was going on and some stuff, names will not be spoken and stuff. He initiated keeping the community together by doing private chats that look like this, but you could have up to 10 people. It was like on Google Hangouts when it first started or whatever, right? And you have people just waiting to come in and pop in, and we would talk, and we did this. Some people did it every night. Sometimes it was once a week or 2-3 weeks. Who knows? Right. You just got on the list. And what was funny about it is you would have people who somehow got the link, and you'd have like these 16-year-old little girls going like that, waving, thinking, and then getting out of there. You have people popping in there because they wanted to see some of us were celebrities to these people, and they'd come on there and just to be like, wow, looking at everybody like they can't believe they're doing this. It was fun. Some people got a kick out of it. And then Jared popped up. This is the first conversation right now that I can remember with you. And we'd already talked once or twice in there. But you came in there and we were just talking about your MTV video. Like, that was cool. We just assumed it was going to get hits. Nobody really knew. We weren't the ones that were really worried about that. As soon as we got done talking about it, you faded in. There you are. And you went, you know what?
He's been summoned.
Yeah, this was so cool. This is one of the first, if not the first, real memory of Jared I have being there talking to him. You just came in there and you didn't even really look at any of us and went, you know what? I put that MTV video up and he gets thousands of hits and stuff, but it didn't do a damn thing for my subscriber list. What the fuck?
I didn't like it. It got 10,000 views that first week. Not one more subscriber than I had the week before. It was just like, oh, I guess if you have, even a minor viral video, it just doesn't matter.
You should have titled it The Osbournes on MTV.
But I just remember that stream last night because somehow somebody was giving out the private link, and you would just have these kids waving like, I think we were secretly being watched or something. I don't know what the deal was. But
speaking of that, those days, who just made a video? Do you remember Cody?
A German guy?
No, he was from Long Island. He was a young kid at the time. He was like maybe 20.
Oh no, yeah, the kid who
and he used to hang out
for.
With us. He made video. He made his first video in like 3 or 4 years. Recently.
Yeah, we were his rock stars. We were his rock stars. Yeah. And I'm so glad if it's the same kid I'm thinking of. I'm definitely going to. You got to send me the video. Here's what happened when Amazing Spider-Man came out with that Garfield kid. I came on there and I did my review, and my review got on everybody's nerves because I had like a milkshake in a styrofoam cup, and I kept pushing the straw up and down, making it squeak. But he I think I really heard it really bothered him that I didn't like the movie. I said it was crap, and I said why it was crap. And he came on and he'd been up all night, like at 12 years old or whatever. He had a Spider-Man toboggan on. And he's like, Heller Mace made this video, but I don't think he understands it's a 3-part movie, and they're going to do this, and it's got a big plan. And it broke my heart because the kid had been up all night, went to the midnight showing, I'm positive. And as he was sitting there defending the movie, you could just see it come over his face like, oh, that did suck. The more he kept talking about it, the more he was like, oh, that is bad. Yeah,
I
you
just
can
got
see
this.
it come over his face, and I'm like, I crushed a 12-year-old kid. Oh my god!
I got this mental image. Do you remember the issue of Spider-Man? They had the kid that collected Spider-Man.
Yeah, I got that. I have two beat up
That's
copies
just
of
the
that.
mental image just popped into my head. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad he made another video. I felt awful about that.
This was Judd Winnick's, since
Yeah.
Gore Vidal just mentioned it, this was Judd Winnick's graphic novel about his time on The Real World and MTV.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's how he got to be a comic book writer. He went on The Real World and said he wanted to be a comic book writer.
That was the last season of Real World I watched. And then that Pedro and Me came out. It was blowing my mind. Pedro was a character on The Real World that died of AIDS.
Right.
And then this was Judd and his wife, who he met on the show, and they're still together, last I heard, a nurse.
Yeah.
They all stayed friends, and he was there. And this is the story after The Real World of Pedro going down,
Yeah.
And it was like within a year of the show being over with. It took him.
I remember this being good. I haven't read it in a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how Judd Winnick got to be a comic book writer. He went on MTV's The Real World and said, I want to be the comic book writer. And that's the power of television.
Is he working today?
Yeah, he's I know. Is he working in comics today?
Right.
I haven't really seen or heard anything of him.
That's just what crossed my mind. Is like I haven't heard his name mentioned in quite a while.
Oh, he made it all the way up to Batman. I mean, he had Barry Ween, the Boy Genius. Now you got to understand.
At one time, yeah. I just wondered.
He's probably working in TV right now, like all those other comic writers.
I think he sort of faded out. Cool. I think Judd faded out when his Under the Red Hood got made into a cartoon, and he got to tell the story without the Infinity Crisis. And I barely have seen him since then. But that his season of Real World was like in '93, I think. I remember where I was living when that was out. That's wild.
And to get us back to comics, here's something I read this week. The Minx.
I'm sorry.
8 issues. This is the first time I ever saw Sean Phillips' artwork, and Peter Milligan wrote it. 1998. And it is so freaking weird.
I did not.
I remember that it was a favorite on the news groups.
Yeah,
about 20 years ago.
It rereading in my memory, it was an interesting failure. And I have to say, rereading it again, it's an interesting failure. But I realize some stuff about it now, such as the plot is nuts. The plot is one of the monkeys we shot off into space. Have you noticed those monkeys, those space monkeys have become characters in so many comic books over time?
It's a cliche. I don't want to say trope. It's a cliche. Yeah.
Now it is. I don't think it was in 22 years ago.
I
don't remember.
Shooting from the hip here, pulp novels, pulp books.
Yeah. I don't know, but I just know now it's a cliche. Now it's, I don't know if it was in 1998, but one of the monkeys was coming back from space, and he was telepathically speaking to people on Earth, especially chosen people on Earth, saying he's coming back, and when he gets back, he's going to talk to God about the fate of the world. So a lot of humanity was panicking. Cult of the Monkey started about people who wanted to save the monkey. And then Judaism, Christianity, and Islam gathered together to gather people together to assassinate the monkey. Meanwhile, the lead character's name is the Minx. And she is just a regular woman, 21 years old. And I think she has a split personality. Her split personality is called the Minx. And the only reason she has a split personality is because when she misbehaved as a young child, her mother would call her a little minx. And I think the Minx split personality has some sort of psychic superpowers, but I'm really not sure. I read 8 issues, the whole story. I'm still not 100% sure the Minx had superpowers. So meanwhile, we got the Minx, and she's one of the chosen ones who got this message from the monkey. She doesn't want to be a chosen one. She's dealing with her real life. She's got a boyfriend. Should she give up her virginity to her boyfriend or not? She's got 2 roommates who she's got her mother and father. Her mother leaves her father to join the monkey cult. Her father ends up dating one of her roommates. Oh, it's nuts. And meanwhile, the other characters are the president of the United States, some random senator, and some random senator's father, who's like the power behind the power, and also secretly turns out to be the Minx's grandfather or something, because the Minx thinks like her mother tells a story about like an alien impregnating her or something, and it's just
hold up the book again, because I have a 22-year-old memory. I think this came out like around 98, right?
98 came out.
Yeah.
And one of the nutty things about it too is that I think this is before everything was written for the trade. It was just at the beginning of everything written for the trade. So the first 3 issues are just 3 issues. Then the 4th issue is, what is it called? The Monkey Quartet, Volume 1. First 1 of 4. So then we get the first 3 issues are just the first 3 issues. Then we get this 4-part story. Then we get the last issue is just the last issue.
Yeah,
but it's really one 8-part story. There's no.
I'm glad it's 22 years later, because here you can correct me. All right. I mean, I'm just going to give you something to bounce off of maybe here. All right. Here's how I remember it. I read the first issue and a half, and I did not like what they were doing with the subtext of the monkey, Jesus, God, and all that stuff they were doing. Then
that's felt not like subtext. That's text.
There you okay. Well, 22 years, brother. I remember why I didn't like
that. Was overt.
Yeah. Now the thing about it is that it wasn't intelligent. It wasn't something to bring up discussion. It felt like a guy who had read Omega the Unknown, and he was trying to write his Steve Gerber story. Plus, I'm doing Vertigo, so I can make it weird. It just didn't feel authentic. You know what I mean?
Peter Milligan has written enough weird stuff that it didn't feel inauthentic to me, but it just didn't pull the one that you can skip the first issue. The second issue and the first 2 pages recaps the first issue, and that's really all you need. It's like you don't even really need to read this if you don't want.
I flipped through the rest of the series because it was in a dollar box by 2001. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, did it get better? Because Peter Milligan's a good writer, in my opinion. I don't know what the hell that is.
Listening to this synopsis just made me think of somebody's take on Philip K. Dick later on in his career, where he kind of went a little nutso.
I can see that.
I'm going to have to finally read some Philip K. Dick, because everybody always compares stuff to Philip K. Dick, and I've never read them. But anyway, the weird thing about this, too, is to spoil the 22-year-old story.
Gosh.
Once the monkey comes back and I guess talks to God, we don't know, things start disappearing. Like Canada disappears. And people don't remember Canada. So I guess that has something to do with the judgment. But the funny thing is, the
rapture.
Well, it's not really the rapture. It just like Canada isn't on the map anymore.
It's more like the
United States just ends in a straight line up top.
More like what, Scott?
That's more like the rupture.
But anyway, like that old joke that they did on Big Bang and other places that. In Indiana Jones, he didn't affect the plot at all. They could have taken him right out of the movie and it would have been the same movie. Nobody in here affected the plot. Not one. In the end, the monkey came back. People started disappearing. And then in the 8th issue, as things are disappearing, she goes to Africa and the monkey's dead. The other monkeys killed him. And that's how it ends. And it's just like, none of this it never pulled together into anything coherent. It was just there was just like idea after idea after idea after idea.
The monkeys killed their savior. I mean, I get what he's doing. I mean, but that's what I'm trying to say. It's sloppily done.
Well, one of the little lines in here too was that one of the reasons God was judging the earth was because humans weren't supposed to be the dominant species on the earth. It was supposed to be these bobo Bobo's monkeys. I forget what the name of them is. They're their own.
Bonobos.
What is it?
Yeah.
Bonobos.
Bonobos.
He's a bonobo monkey, and bonobo monkeys were supposed to be. The Earth was supposed to be for them. That's who God.
Do you know
made the
why?
Earth for.
Because they're sex freaks. Bonobos are sex freaks.
But the whole thing, it was just like, what? The whole thing was, you just kept hoping it would pull together, and it didn't. It just never pulled together.
It really does sound like somebody's take on a Philip K. Dick story structure.
But it wasn't terrible. I mean, it's not like it was a terrible comic. It was just a failure. It was an interesting failure.
Like I said, 22, that's what I'm getting at. 22
years later.
Flipping through it, all through when it was in like a dollar box and stuff. And I thought it was absolute garbage, man. I'm like, what, what is this,
Like I said, I remember, I think from the looks of these bags, I didn't have because it's got a near mint sticker on this. I think I got like the first issue and the 8th issue, which you really don't need for the story, which has got an $8 price tag on it. I know I didn't pay $8 for this. I think I picked up these issues as they were lying around Marvel when they came out. So it's like occasionally I do that. I just like collect a series just by walking around the office and looking for it. And this was one of those series.
You got 8 more bathroom comics.
Then, like in the early 2000s, when mycomicshop.com opened up, and they had all sorts of obscure stuff for like $1 a piece. I filled in a lot of stuff that I didn't have like issues for, like just obscure, like the issues of Elric from First Comics I was missing, maybe an issue of some Fantagraphics series that I never got, and I think I got these 2 from that. Because I know I didn't pay $8 for issue 8.
Tommy's mentioning Steve Gerber's Nevada, and I don't know why, but that just sticks in the back of my brain. Was there another series also called Nevada that was? Did Steve Gerber just write that, or did he do any drawing on it?
No, he just wrote that.
Okay, was it Phil Wenslade that drew that?
Oh, I don't remember.
For some odd reason, this name is just popping out of the back of my brain. It's going to drive me nuts until I go.
I cannot remember who drew it.
Okay, I don't know why, but all of a sudden it just struck a nerve. It's like, oh, there's a memory back there.
Yeah.
Oh, here it is.
Peter Milligan did some phenomenal done-in-ones in Detective Comics in the late 80s. Okay.
Yeah, here's the if you want to know where Nevada came from Vertigo, and I think it might have been on this show. People steered me towards it, I guess. Issue 16 of Howard the Duck, when Gerber was laying on some deadlines. So he mentions another story he could do about a Las Vegas showgirl and an ostrich, and it became Nevada in 20 years later at Vertigo.
I just remember house ads for that series.
Yeah.
Well, I thought Nevada was before 1988.
No, Nevada came out in the 90s, I'm pretty sure, at Vertigo.
Yeah, I thought it was like early 90s. I'm not even sure.
Yeah, I remember seeing ads for Nevada in Transmetropolitan.
I've got a Vertigo winner, a Vertigo special, Vertigo winners. They used to come out with, like, I guess it was sort of like an annual just for Vertigo. And there's a Brian, they're on the page with a bunch of other Vertigo characters drawn by Brian Boland, So that might have been like 95.
The other thing I read this week is I've been rereading Invincible. And I'm finally up to volume 10.
Superman meets Peter Parker. Yeah, that's how I feel about that.
Yeah, it's just a really good superhero series. If you've never read Invincible, there's 12 hardcover volumes if you want the hardcover, or 24 softcover volumes.
Tell them who wrote it.
Robert Kirkman. Ryan Otley draws most of it. 144 issues, and it's just a really, really good superhero series.
We're up to 15 people and nobody's ratted us out.
I just have to bring this up really quick. I was looking at Edward 2962's Avatar picture. That's the best one I've ever seen.
What is it of?
It's Cheech Wizard.
It is. I didn't catch that. What was the lizard's name? I'm blowing a blank.
He didn't really have a name. He was just called Lizard.
There's a video on YouTube you can find of Baudet. I think he's talking to a college group, and he's reading his work, and they're showing the images, and he's doing the voices for these characters. He even had voices.
Yeah, when he did, it was funny you mentioned that when he did the cartoon concerts. His voice, I didn't realize, I didn't have the mental image back in the day of his idea of how Cheech should sound was based on W.C. Fields. And then when I heard him doing that voice, it did not match the voice that I had in my head that should be coming out of Cheech Wizard. So it was kind of jarring, but it is what it is. Yeah.
If we're gonna talk about late 70s Marvel Carmen Infantino, you're not gonna hear anything good from me. He used to make me cry when I'd pick up my favorite comic and there was a Carmen Infantino on it. Like, oh.
No, I hated Carmen Infantino's art back then.
Man,
on Spider-Woman on Spider-Woman it didn't improve when they got rid of Infantino and replaced him with Steve Leialoha.
Yeah, that was good stuff. I did not like Carmen Infantino. His late 70s Marvel work I thought was terrible. Mega's one of my favorites.
My first exposure to Infantino when he was doing the work for
let me Ed.
Yeah.
Ed, you had I think 10 issues Omega the Unknown from Steve Gerber in the late 70s, and this is like a Vertigo book 20 years before. It's really good, right? He didn't get to finish it, right? And then for some unknown reason, the issues you're talking about, they finished it in Defenders. And I've tried, I've got multiple copies because I've tried to find these issues, but for some reason,
there's no reason to read those issues.
And Gerber wasn't there. Gerber didn't do those issues. And it's one of those things of what could have been. Like this book had legs. It would have definitely been a sleeper hit, and people discovered it over the years afterwards, And I want to throw out a big thank you to Charleston66 because he actually mailed me the complete trade before I had a complete set. So, yeah.
I forwarded you that email I got from that random Omega fan, right?
Oh, that's right.
Ages ago.
Yeah, I remember that now. Yeah, I still have it too. Yeah.
Yeah, I made a video on Omega the Unknown a few years ago. And I have my email on my YouTube channel. One day, this Omega or the Unknown fan emailed me. I can't remember who it was, but he was giving me the scoop on what the hard. And I love Omega the Unknown. I've read it many times, but there's some guys out there who are hardcore Omega the Unknown fans. And he was giving me all the stuff, linking the different Gerber series with him. I was like, whoa. I didn't know all this stuff existed.
I remember we talked about it after I read it, and I couldn't follow it. I'm like, I was impressed. Like,
I was like, it takes a lot to make me go, wow.
Yeah,
this guy went deep.
That needs to be made public somehow better. You know what I mean? Like that guy needs to get it out. Now, what I've read, I went back, and it was actually because of our last show, but I'm rereading Legion of Superheroes. I think this is volume 4. It's the 5 years later that came out where, there's no Legion and it was dark, 9-panel grid. And a lot of people didn't like it, but it's actually a fantastic read. I was sitting here rereading this again. I'm up to issue 15 and it's an easy read, believe it or not. But I think the problem is that people didn't know their Legion as well as they thought. They don't go by their superhero names. Okay. Cosmic Boy is Rock, and all that stuff. But they started by issue 13. They started putting posters in here. They put a poster in one, and you can go to the letters column, and it'll tell you who all the characters are. These will be our normal ones. But it holds up, and I kept looking at it like, is this really almost 30 years old? I kept looking at it, and I'm reading it, and I'm like, it's aged very good, in my opinion, doing this, reading this. Like I said, I ended up just flying through reading that many of them, I was able to skim because I've read it before, but around the, reading it the second, third, whatever time it is and stuff, there's a few things I didn't pick up on before.
Sleepy Reader mentions 60s Infantino. And I found it interesting that I've read Carmen Infantino considers his career like an unfinished symphony. Because he was just hitting his stride in the 60s, coming up with new styles and new design and a new way of drawing. He was really influential at DC in the 60s. He designed a lot of covers that other people drew.
Well, he started
he was really playing with the form, and then he became, had a chance to be a publisher. So he took the chance to be a publisher, and he was publisher at DC for what, 5 or 6 years, which is a really good job.
Yeah.
But eventually, he was fired from that job or left it. I don't know which. And he went back to being a freelancer. And it was really tough for him going back to being a freelancer.
At Marvel.
And he lost all his momentum from 10 years ago when he was younger and full of energy. And he kind of, he would say he never, his career is an unfinished symphony. He never reached his potential. Yeah. And I think it shows in his late 70s work, which I never could stand as a kid.
I don't know the context, but the way it came off is that he really came off very sort of bitter. And I don't want to say he had an exaggerated idea of his importance, because he and Gardner Fox did The Flash in 58, that showcase that started the Silver Age. But I think he tried to sue DC for all his character designs and stuff from the Silver Age, mostly in the Flash's Rogue gallery. Mm-hmm. And, it made the news, and then it just sort of went away. You were just sort of like, what's he doing? But I can totally see him making, peaking in the 70s, and then he's back he's doing second tier books.
He's picking up fill-in freelance work at Marvel.
Yeah. I think his last great moment really might have been that Flash, 325, where Barry Allen killed Zoom, and then he finished it out to 350.
The Trial of the Flash.
Yeah.
I actually liked that when it first came out, only because I was fascinated by how long the story was stretched out. And the Carmen Infantino art was at least interesting, and I could tell he liked it doing that more than he did other stuff. I'm not going to tell you it was great by any stretch of the imagination, but I can remember I got rid of my issues many years ago. It was about 10 years ago. I was like, I want to really see that again. I wish I didn't get rid of my issues. And I ended up, downloading them digitally from the Usenet just to look at them. And I read like an issue or two and went, there's no reason for me to read these or look at them. It was better in my memory than the actual issues.
Well, what was going on and what grabbed me, it was the first time where I didn't think it was like a great book, but it was interesting because you had no idea where they were going. I mean, they gave him plastic surgery. You know what I mean? They did all these crazy things with Barry, and it was because they knew he was going to die 2 years later in Crisis. So we didn't know that, but you're like, what are they doing? I mean, they had, there was no way back the way they were writing it. But Schwartz's time, he kind of kept the Bat books afloat when the sales were declining before Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil finally really saved the books and stuff. So what is this? Oh, the new Reliance Legion Superhero started off good, then just got weird, and it was putting off to read. If he's talking about the current one, I'm not even going to talk about it. I don't know what that book is.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sleepy Reader's favorite Infantino was Adam Strange. I actually did a painting for my friend once of an Infantino Adam Strange cover. I had this one particular style. Only a few times where I would take an old comic book cover that I liked, blow it up to about 30 by 40, and paint it kind of with parts of my own style in it. So I would duplicate the cover and then put all these sort of other elements in it too. But I remember I did that. It was the Infantino one with him, a famous Infantino cover. I don't remember what issue it is. He's like in space, like full cover with a planet Earth or Rand behind him. But it's like a glamour shot of Adam Strange.
One of the first comics I remember reading as a little kid was an issue of, I think it was Mystery in Space, where Adam Strange was fighting a cloud monster.
Yeah. Carmine was that guy. Carmine and Kirby did not like each other, from what I'm told. Or at least Carmine really didn't like Kirby.
Evidently, Carmine and Gil Kane really didn't like each other either.
Yeah, Carmine Infantino. Well, here's how I've read things over the years. If I made a big picture, and it really is, it's probably 10% interpretation. Carmine wanted to make sure that Kirby knew that Carmine was the star of DC, not this Mr. Kirby.
Yeah.
And that's why, and it was part of the reason the Fourth World probably failed when he started all his books in the 70s. He tried to take credit for things that Kirby created, and comic book fans found proof, like Commandy. They found the Amazing Stories #1 or something from the 50s. That was like a blueprint for Commandy after Carmine said it was his idea. That was just it. Carmine really it's like he was his own worst enemy. And he just, I don't know. I think a lot of the stuff comes off like he started getting Marvel envy, and they were beating him with the drug issue. They beat him with getting the license for Planet of the Apes. It just was driving him nuts. This is how it came off. Mm-hmm. And then with Kirby, he had people come in and redraw the face of Superman anytime Kirby. This is why I don't talk about Infantino, man. I'm about to ready to get off
it might be that when he went back to freelancing, he purposely might have chosen to go to Marvel because it was at the same time that Kirby went back to Marvel. So he probably wanted to prove that he could beat him in his own game.
And he gets he gets Star Wars, which all the young kids were into, and Spider-Woman, who ended up having a Saturday morning cartoon show. I can see how in his head, he's probably like, oh yeah, I'm here. I've arrived. I don't know. Yeah, he's one of those guys where the more I start talking, the more I start remembering, the more I will start wanting to pull some of these books out going, look what they said here. And I've already lost my breath talking about this guy.
Yeah.
I'm turning red thinking about him.
This is all, who was it? Edward who mentioned him before?
Tom Bagley and Edward, and then Tom Bagley came in, and this is the one that got me going because he's bringing out the interviews, the stuff you may not find on the internet. It's in print, and that's that's where I started learning about him. Mark Evanier. I remember reading an interview by Mark Evanier about a little bit about what was going on and stuff.
Right.
And I can go on and on. But switching gears here just for a minute, I was telling you guys how I did a little research. I'm trying to find an article in Wizard. So if there's anybody out there that knows what issue this is in, I've got it down to issue either 109, 118, 127, 143, where it comes up where this dude that worked for Wizard read every Punisher appearance. That would be 72 to the year 2000 of whenever Punisher came out. And they had his kill count, and everybody started realizing that the Punisher was a serial killer. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And but I kind of got sidetracked, and I knew Scott was going to love this. And what I found going through my Wizards trying to find that article was that they had some really good stuff in Wizards. If I start going through Wizards, I get sidetracked. They had Last Man Standing, which was an article every month where they would just take two characters, and then they would talk about who won. They had Aquaman versus Namor and stuff like that. This one was Space Ghost versus the Tick, and there's Steve Rude drew the page. Huh. Steve Rude drew an unknown Space Ghost Tick Steve Rude page. I would pay to own this. You know what I mean? I would seriously consider a bank loan. And this is issue 109 of Wizard. That sidetracked me. Huh. So
109.
So Scott, I immediately thought of Scott, so.
Your Punisher as a serial killer actually reminds me of, I don't know if you guys know who Patrick Wilhelm is. He's a filmmaker YouTuber. And he generally makes, he's also a comic fan. But he generally, I don't think Star Wars, with no royalties, Star Wars wasn't a great assignment. Because you had to deal with licensing. Right. It was more hassle for not more pay. But anyway, Patrick Wilhelm, he usually makes videos about movies. Like I said, he's also a comic book fan, and he made a video this week that said something like, "What's the point of R-rated superhero movies?"
Okay, that came up in my stream. Gotcha.
Yeah, good little video essay, but he had an interesting point in it when he was talking about. First of all, he made a distinction between like entertainment that's specifically for children and entertainment that's child friendly or child appropriate. And he used the Batman animated series as an example of a series that's child appropriate. Adults could watch it all they want. It's pretty good. Lots of adults watch it, but also it's appropriate for children. And you know, that's his favorite as with a lot of people, that's their favorite Batman ever is the Bruce Timm animated series Batman.
I'm one of those people. Yes.
Yeah, but his basic idea, which I thought was interesting, was he said he thinks it was a mistake, and other people have said this. He thinks it was a mistake to make purely adult comics with, say, Batman, because it's too much, especially since these are corporate comics now, it's too much of a contradiction, and it's too hard to have a Batman that's for kids on backpacks and a Batman that shows his penis. It's those two things. And the Punisher is a perfect example of that. To have the Punisher never really worked as a serial killer in the Marvel universe to me. Like, and he was like, you know, it's perfectly okay to have R-rated comics, but you should make you shouldn't make Batman R-rated. You should make a new super. It's like that. He's like, that's why I like The Boys. The Boys is perfectly as an R-rated superhero world, but it doesn't take Batman and make it R-rated. And I thought that was an interesting point of view. I was like, you know, that's why DC got the suits at DC got so mad about the bat penis, is they can't have adult Batman comics and sell backpacks to kids. That's not going to work.
I'll be listening, guys. Hold on. I'll be listening. Keep talking.
Mm-hmm. So I found that an interesting idea. And I think, you know, it may have been a mistake to make, you know, adult comics out of Batman. It doesn't mean you can't have adult comics.
I understand the reasoning, but I think it's ridiculous.
I think it's a very Americanized look at things. Maybe it's just me. Does it seem like the rest of the world doesn't have as much of a problem with that as we do here in the States?
Well, I think that the rest of the world has a distinction. The rest of the world didn't have just superheroes.
Right.
For 20 years, where people who wanted adult comics, since we had just superheroes, wanted their superhero comics to be adult. Mm-hmm. I think that's a distinction between the rest of the world that always had kid-appropriate comics and adult comics.
Sure, I mean, I could buy me a Luminari comic at age 10 and nobody would bat an eye.
Well, considering, you know, I used to be the kind of person that was like, let them create, do things, but I thought there was like a respect. And it used to be like, it felt like people understood these were not their toys. They're borrowing them, and you would take care of your friends' toys, and then you'd move on.
Right.
And what I'm going to use here is Toy Story. You had Andy who took care of his toys, and by the time, I don't know, Toy Story 3, 4, whatever, he passed the toys on as hard as it was, and he went to college. And he had little adventures with them and still respected the toys. Then you had the kid next door that just blew them up. And I think that's what a lot of comic book creators feel like in the last 6-7 years. It's almost like they're spiteful that these aren't their toys, so they're going to blow them up. But
maybe 26, 27 years.
Having said that, did that kid have a shirt that had his skull on it?
Yeah, you know.
So now we're back to your Punisher thing again.
Ah, well played, Scott.
The Punisher, that's why the Punisher always gets watered down, because a guy who kills people can't exist in the same world as Spider-Man.
No, all you have to do is find one superhero that one bulletproof superhero that gets pissed off, and that's the end of that story.
Well, let's go back to canon. Yeah. Let's go back to canon here, right? I mean, when the Punisher came out the first time, that comic book was in my house. I read it when I was 5 or 6. And as I got older, I got the Punisher 1985, whatever, you know, miniseries. And I had the first issue of Punisher, the ongoing series. I mean, I hung in there with the Punisher up to about Garth Ennis. You know what I'm saying? But the thing is how he changed over the years. When he first showed up, he got played by the Jackal. He was an idiot, and he was a killer. He was a hired killer and an idiot. He was an accident.
But he was shooting rubber bullets.
Not
Yeah.
then. Not in that issue.
I'm gonna have to pull out the Marvel Tales I have, but I think he was hired to kill Spider-Man.
Right.
Not
Yeah,
hurt him.
he used they call it mercy bullets in that spectacular run where he goes nuts and starts. No. It was before.
Mhm.
It's the first appearance of Jigsaw is in a giant size, and Spider-Man teams up with Nightcrawler, and I think it's the first time he meets one of the new X-Men. And the Punisher using mercy bullets there. Then it stops using mercy bullets and it starts shooting jaywalkers in that spectacular Spider-Man run.
I remember it was in Miller's Daredevil that he was like rubber bullets. Right.
Yeah.
You knew he wasn't using rubber bullets.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It was so. I mean, he's always been a killer, and they justified it because his family was killed.
But see, I don't think he was always a killer. They made I don't remember him killing anyone. He may have been a killer, but they never showed him kill anyone at the very beginning.
I think by the 80s they did. I can't say anything about the 70s, but
the Daredevil story is definitely shooting to kill. I'm not sure.
Right, and the Daredevil story is when they started to turn him lethal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's why I was going to get
before the Amazing Spider-Man annual that Danny O'Neill wrote with Frank Miller art, because the Punisher definitely wants to shoot and kill Dr. Octopus in that story. Mm-hmm. Then it's Daredevil appearance. Then it's that stupid spectacular Spider-Man story. And one thing that happened in that spectacular Spider-Man story, somebody finally understood. Wait a minute, this guy doesn't have a real name because he was indicted as the Punisher. He went to trial as the Punisher.
See, and that's why I wanted to get that Wizard article. It has his kill list. It talked about the hundreds of people he killed. How many were foot soldiers? How many were this? How many were that? You know what I mean? And and when you add the body count up, and why he's doing it, there's a profile of a serial killer. I mean, in the 90s, you had serial killer documentaries. You had serial killer trading cards. You can still get on here and stream and find these H.H. Holmes. He was an avenging angel. He fit that. Criminal Minds would say he was an avenging angel. He thinks he's doing justice.
I don't think he was a serial killer per se, but he was a psychopath.
Did you see how Dolph Lundgren in the Punisher movie from like 88 or 89? Did you see how Dolph Lundgren portrayed him?
No, I
don't remember.
That's probably not a movie I'm ever going to watch.
Yeah, well,
I punish the guilty. Because they're the guilty. They cut out the
a lot of people do like his, maybe not the movie, but they like his version of the Punisher because he's nuts.
Go ahead.
I got to see. I think that was the early '90s that came out, because before it came out, I was at Marvel. That was the very first one, right? We got a work print of it because it was in production for so long. It was one of those that weren't going to release because they didn't think it was good.
Yeah.
And so we got to see a rough cut of it.
Yeah. Before
the final edit, it was being passed around on VHS tape. And the funny thing about it there was a couple funny things about it. It's before the final sound effects are added in. So they just add in placement sound effects. So there was one time when he was like in the Japanese building that had all those paper doors. And every time one of the paper doors would open, they used the Star Trek door opening sound effect. This is a placeholder. And it was just funny to see.
Punisher, I've got the movie on VHS. I mean, this is the Dolph Lundgren Punisher movie, right? Okay, making sure I'm on track.
But it's not the rough cut, so you don't have this. And they also cut out the line that cracked us all up when they had the Punisher all angsty, and he went, "I punish the guilty because they're the guilty." And it was just like, oh,
it sounds like an MST3K episode.
Yeah, it was a great, and I was so disappointed to see that line cut out in the final version.
The movie, when I watched it, and I mean, I still liked it, but it felt like this was something you would show people to show that there's potential. Here's what we want to do. Now give us money so we can really do what we want to do. That's what it felt like,
But like Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon's Punisher, I think is really good, but it can't exist in the Marvel universe.
Right.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of talking about like the character, right? And Garth Ennis did the interview. I think that's just it. With all the talk of X-Files and serial killers in the '90s, it was the same thing we're talking about. There was like a zeitgeist where more and more people were starting to view the Punisher. When you would in my circles, everybody talking,
Right.
we brought the Punisher and stuff, right? Because Garth Ennis's first Marvel work was Punisher kills the Marvel Universe. That's what got the discussion going. I remember. But he could be classified as a serial killer. He justifies that they're guilty and criminals, and he's avenging his family and he's nuts, and he's just justifying what he does. I mean, psychologically, it's like Dexter. He was just pointed at other serial killers. He's still a serial killer, and that's all I'm saying about the Punisher. But the interview I'm looking for is they were talking about the Punisher being a villain, and it might have been about villains having their own comics, and somehow Chuck Dixon got involved where they were like, man, if I'd realized that the Punisher was a villain, I would have wrote all my Punisher stuff completely different. It even dawned on him that he agreed.
When Stephen Grant did the miniseries, a few years later, when he had that comic book resources column, he said that he saw the Punisher as the point man for a backup team that was never coming. So he knows he's doing the war on crime on his own.
Yeah.
That in itself is a sign of a mental illness.
You think?
Yeah, but the way he's portrayed in the comic is definitely mentally ill, especially because with Mike Zeck doing the art, you saw every time he was shooting a gun, he had a
crazy eyes.
Yeah, crazy eyes and crazy mouth. Yeah, he had a berserker rage.
But what I'm saying is that, especially today, with Marvel and DC being part of larger corporations, which want to sell all these characters to children, the Punisher type of characters can't exist in that environment. Well, they just can't.
I will tell you what, man. I remember when I actually stopped keeping up with what the Punisher was going. They had a female Punisher pop up in the book or something. Right. That's actually when I kind of dropped out. But but anyway, I remember right before Frankencastle hit, they had an issue of Punisher, like I don't know what it was, 2012, maybe it was Rick Remender, I don't know. And I can go back and look at my video where I'm bitching about it. But they had a thing where they had the storyline where the Punisher was just getting swarmed by a bunch of supervillains. And we're talking Tiger Shark. Do you guys remember Tiger Shark? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the Punisher, they didn't show the fight. They just went to a panel where he's standing on top of a pile of villains and he's got Tiger Shark in a chain choking them out and throwing them down. And I'm like, you can't beat this. Never should have happened. They started making their villains a joke through the Punisher. Yeah. And right there, that's when I was like, that's the start of the decline for Marvel for me. When you're sitting here, I was sitting here explaining why you can't choke out a man who's built to walk the bottom of the ocean.
He jumped the top.
But the idea is that the Punisher does not go after supervillains because he's going to get his ass kicked. He's going to die.
Yeah.
Even back then in that Spider-Man annual with Dr. Octopus. Dr. Octopus starts the arms notice that the Punisher is there and start beating the crap out of the Punisher and they just dump him in the ocean.
Yeah. Then you had Frankencastle after that I've defended until I got the last 3 or 4 issues of that series, and I'm like, oh my god, that's on YouTube.
It would be interesting to me if you could go to either Mac Bolan or any of the various authors that the Punisher was basically influenced by, like the Executioner series novels and whatnot. And
there's a David Kraft interview with the Executioner author in one of the black and white magazines.
But it would be interesting to go to one of those guys and say, hey, do you realize in 30 years that somebody that's heavily influenced by your character is going to end up as the Cosmic Ghost Rider?
Oh, God.
What the hell are you talking about?
I would go, oh, wow. That was a good point there, Scott. I mean, I'm like, oh, yeah, you got me in one of those moments.
But the Cosmic Ghost Rider is more kid-friendly than the Punisher.
Yeah. See, what they
things that go around not shooting people are more friendly. The Punisher.
Well, you got to remember how they did the Punisher. There was an imprint, Marvel Knights, where they just handed a bunch of stuff to Casada. Then they had the Max line, and that's where you get your adult books. That was a rating system. But the Punisher's got such a following that they could just have him in the Punisher universe. You know what I mean? Like they could really
that's when Marvel was on its own.
Yeah.
As part of Disney.
I mean, Punisher's made some money for him. It doesn't matter, the longevity and all that.
I'm just saying you can't.
I wish they'd do that with Conan now and put him back in his own universe. But
Marvel has got their act together with those movies.
Yeah.
And all those movies are kid appropriate.
Right.
There's been two Punisher movies. One that was actually took back by Marvel, the Warzone. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
They have nothing to do with the MCU.
Yeah.
And I don't think the Marvel is going to do nothing to rock that boat. So I don't think the Punisher fits in. I think it is a problem at DC for them wanting to make adult comics with Batman.
Yeah.
Because if you're the marketing guys in charge of DC, why would you let that happen?
All right, you want to do some comments real quick, because this one kind of relates to what you're saying here.
Okay.
Is that okay? Reminds me of what Dick Giordano told John Byrne. You have to understand there's two Superman, the one you do, the one we merchandise. That's what you're kind of saying here. And just when I went, I said I'll be listening. I had to go check on something. I heard a noise in the living room. She's probably still laying there, right? I didn't know what was going on, so I went to check on it. It turns out it was my wife snickering because she heard bat penis from us. So. See, Dr. Silver Age. What's up, brother? I got this. I get that some folks like more adult style story, but I always enjoy the escapism comics, but not limited by reality.
I'm okay with adult storytelling style, but I think I agree with the people who said it's probably not a good idea to make adult style comics for your characters that are all ages.
After seeing the disaster of some of the stuff that they're putting in the Marvel books, and I could sit here and bullet point it, you know what I mean? And some of it's been handled really, I'm not saying that some of that stuff shouldn't have been in there, but it's been handled poorly, that I never thought I'd reach a point where I'm like, there's definitely a line here that this is still entertainment, escapism, accessible to kids. You know what I mean? And I mean, I've come along to this line of thinking. Honestly,
I'm perfectly okay with the grossest, violentest, most sexual stuff out there because I'm a grown up. But I don't think you should do that stuff with Spider-Man. Make up new characters. Make up the boys.
Yeah. That's like, I think we're saying the same thing is what I'm saying. I just don't know the line I don't know the line yet. This is new to me. You know what I mean? I've just seen the disaster that's happened.
I've been reading indie comics for a long time. There's no line with me in terms of stuff for me.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's a good idea for DC to do The Boys with, the actual Batman and Superman.
Well, they handled that well. They said, Garth, we love you. Here's your rights back. We can't do this.
I thought that was an interesting situation because I don't know if you like the original The Boys series is what I'd call subversive in terms of they were taking Batman and Superman and making you look at them in a different when you take a like Superman archetype and you make them super violent and sexual, that makes you look at Superman a little bit differently. That's why it's subversive. It subverts the wholesome image of Superman. And which is okay if you're some little indie comic. But the fact that DC was subverting their own image of Superman is what bothered them, I think. Is they were like, hold on.
Okay.
It's not us who's supposed to be subverting Batman and Superman. No. We don't want this, which is
that
why
goes back to the Authority. You remember that? They didn't like the idea of Apollo and Midnighter outselling Superman and Batman at the time.
Well, that's how we got Action Comics 775, where you had Superman versus an
Right.
authority-like team. What's wrong with
Yeah.
the Justice
The
in American
Elite.
way anyway? Yeah, the
That was a
Elite.
good comic too.
But going back to the boys, the issue that made them drop it is because the character it was the Teen Titans they were fighting. And there was some sexual stuff going on there that was
Right.
hilarious. But during the fight, one of them, Cock Robin, you know who that character? It's Robin. A version of Robin got killed, and when he got killed, he had a hamster duct taped into his butt, and the durable hamster, whatever it was, escaped. That was a little bit of the line with Wildstorm and DC being like, oh wow, it was what Garth Ennis was doing like that, even though it was comedic effect.
But I think it was not just because of what he was doing. I think it was because what he was doing was actually subversive.
Huh.
Some things try to be subversive and they're just not, but he was actually being subversive. He was changing the way you look at the DC Comics line, especially since it was coming from DC Comics. You notice as soon as it went to, where did it go? IDW, Dynamite or something?
Yeah, I think
there was no controversy anymore. It was much less subversive because it wasn't coming from DC.
I'm only missing 7 issues, but it's here. But did you make it all the way up to the 20s when they did the G-Men, who were the X-Men?
Oh, I've read the whole thing recently, digitally. I don't have the issues, but
yeah, that was actually the issue where about made me drop it. I was like, oh, Garth finally found my line. You know what I mean? I'm like, whoa, you know. So what I'm getting at is that if you think how he was, if you know, with what you're saying that he was making you look at DC characters a different way.
Right.
I brought up the X-Men, the G-Men that they did. Holy crap. I mean, you know, he went for Marvel's throat on those characters, and you know.
But that's okay since it came out from some small indie company. I think it wasn't okay. It was more subversive when it was coming out from DC.
Yeah, when you work on those big Marvel DC characters, you're a custodian of lore. I'm gonna get through the comments real quick, man. Yeah.
Tommy just brought up a good point. He's talking about working on the characters, being a custodian of the lore.
Mm-hmm.
The one title I can think of that really epitomizes that, and is also quality, and it also appeals to both adults and is also child appropriate, was when Darwin Cook did The New Frontier.
I still haven't read that. Everyone loves that one.
It's really good. Darwin Cook did all kinds of real research, even down to the designs of the tables and chairs of the 50s. It's fantastic.
I've said this more than once, and it's kind of an extreme statement, but if you wanted to fix everything that's wrong with mainstream superheroes right now, you would bring Darwin Cook back to life and let him do all of them.
Yeah. The thing about the Final Frontier, Jared, is that the framing that they do is that the losers end up on Dinosaur Island, if you know your Silver Age stuff. And that was just a prequel to the actual story. I wanted the loser story more than I wanted what he did with the Final Frontier. The loser story he did gave them their epic story where you're like, hell yeah, that's the losers. Yeah. You know what I mean? I mean, it was awesome. Apparently, this is from Pocan Joe Comic Review. Apparently, the Punisher's new editor, Stephen Wacker. Why do I know that name? I know that name.
He's the Punisher. He's been an editor for a while.
Yeah. Has given the Punisher an official kill count. This is of 2020, I'm assuming. My article would be 20 years old, 20 years ago. But the Punisher has an official kill count of 48,502 people, counting all the way back from his first appearance to the present. And I'm wondering if this is going to kill the people that we didn't see in Vietnam when he was there, if he still has ties to Vietnam. So tell me that's not a serial killer.
I just want to point out that that's 48,000 pieces of intellectual property that Disney owns and can exploit. That's how they're looking at it. He's one of those people.
But let me tell you something, brother.
I just did some math. Okay.
When I was like 12 or 13 years old, it was an amazing thing that happened. I had my BB gun out. I was aiming at a can. When I aimed at the can, a little bird actually flew perfectly to where I shot the bird in the ass. It hit the ground and flew off, but it had the BB stuck in its ass. I lost sleep. You let me kill 48,502 people, maybe I'll lose sleep. So if
Sleepy
he could
says
sleep at
nothing
night,
too gross for Jared. Bring it on. You have no idea.
let's look
The
at that
stuff
number
I
again.
saw at that Marvel bullpen.
This is 3 or 4 times more people than buy Marvel comics nowadays.
If you do the math, that's one person per day with no days off for 132 straight years.
Yeah, and we don't know the things that have happened off panel. You know what I mean? I mean, there's this could go up easily. And the thing about it is that 48,502 people. I think I know what happened to a lot of people that were collecting Marvel comics. The Punisher got them. So,
that just reminded me when you said that many people. Remember when I said that the 50,000 people talking about comics is a force multiplier? I knew this one girl, 19, 20 years old, and she didn't read any comics, but she followed what was happening in the comics from the Wikipedia pages and stuff. She was interested in what was happening in the comics, but didn't want to read the comics. And I think that's the kind of force multiplier thing that gets people to the movies.
Right.
I found it bizarre, but how many other young people are like that?
I get
interested.
Well, a few of them read the Wikipedia entries, and they're now writing comics.
Yeah.
But I also get weird looks from people that when I bring up the point, it's like, well, I understand that you guys like the movies, and that's fine. I have no problems with that. But does anybody really give a damn about the books anymore? And they look at you like, books? What are you talking about?
I never read them.
Yeah.
All my lapsed comic book fan friends, they all go see the movies. They don't read the comics anymore. But I think part of the reason they go to see the movies too is that they're all kid appropriate. They're all well done. They're not crazy. They're not adults only comic books. They go with their kids a lot too. So I think there's something to be said about, superhero stuff not being kid friendly is not necessarily for Marvel and DC. That is not necessarily a good idea, right? In this, especially with since they're part of bigger companies. Well,
I kind of think you have comic books, then you have graphic novels, then you have. I mean, there's different. Even the form. Right. I think in my mind, I could like. What's the word I'm looking for? Compartmentalize. There we go. Certain kinds of stories. You know what I mean? To me, a more expensive graphic novel that a little kid really couldn't afford, at least in my day, could be the adult stuff. And you don't find it on the rack, on the spinner rack.
Right, but
we don't have a spinner rack anymore. I know.
The problem is marketing wise when they're both the same thing. When every kid wants Batman because they see him in the movies, they see him in the comic, and you've got a bat penis in one or whatever, just an adult comic. You're in trouble. You're gonna be in trouble. That's why it's like, why not just make your adult comics with different? Well, the reason is because we grew up with the comics and wanted adult comics to grow up with us. But I don't know how much longer that can last.
Well, let's say this was something different in a different format. Let's say this was a novelization of Batman and we get described to him that he's naked and stuff. How does that serve the character or the story? It was just gratuitous. That's the problem too.
I don't even think that doesn't even bother. I'm okay with gratuitous. That part doesn't bother me at all. Like I said, it's just that. Like I said, I think that line of thinking is right when it comes to these corporate superhero characters. They should be, since you're selling them to kids. Generally, I mean, superheroes were kind of invented for kids, and we all loved them when we were kids, and you're still selling them to kids. We lost Paolo. That I don't know that it's a good idea to take the same characters you sell to kids and make adult stories with them. I don't think that's sustainable.
With Gore Vidal here, elementary school teachers I know were quite shocked that Deadpool was for adults, and worse, their first, second, and third graders had seen it. Yeah, I saw it with my mom and dad. Dude, I remember this going back to the 70s. You know what I mean? I remember this going back to the 70s. This has always been a thing. I got a friend who took his kid to horror movies in the 70s and 80s because he didn't want his kid to be scared of anything. So the kid was like 7 years old watching Friday the 13th, marathons.
If you're if you're a
just
responsible parent and you have discussion with your kid and explain to them, this is, and be responsible about it, that's actually a good thing.
Yeah,
Well,
there goes
my
the
parents
opposite,
didn't.
expecting people to be responsible.
Well,
Yeah, my parents didn't want me to read comics, but they had no problem letting me watch the TV show Crime Story when I was 8, and a much more violent TV show, an Italian cop show called La Piovra, about the mafia, the Neapolitan mafia, and basically the second season ended with the Commissioner Corrado Catani dying under a hail of bullets, and we saw all the bullets perforating his body, and I was 7.
yeah.
So you can't expect responsibility. And Con Sooth said here, kids don't know comics exist anymore. That may be true, but they know all the characters. And all the characters are being sold to them. Yeah, I can't watch the new Harley Quinn animated show with my daughter, so I feel the adults only idea is starting to seep out of the comics and into other media. Exactly. It was an interesting video essay that Patrick Wilhelms meant, and I think I agree with it. Like I said, it was called what's the deal with R-rated superhero movies or something like that. And it's like it really, The Boys is a perfect example of a hit for adult superhero, but that's not something that's sold to kids.
What about the problem with me even trying to bring anything like this up is it may not even be a good question because I don't know. I assume that stuff like this continues to be made because it sells. You follow what I'm saying?
That's why it's made.
So does that mean that maybe some of the stuff has just moved on past an audience that doesn't exist anymore?
The problem is they're still the audience does exist. They're watching the movies.
Mm-hmm.
How many kids go to see every Marvel and DC movie?
Well, right now they've got Paul Dini. Is it Paul Dini? He's back on doing like the further adventures of the Batman animated series.
Right.
Okay, so the books are out there. You know what I mean? Are they selling? If they sell, would they make more books with that tone, if you will?
If they do or don't, the ones that don't have that tone are going to be trouble.
Yeah.
If you're selling $1 billion worth of movies and toys to kids with Batman in it, why do you want to sell a Batman story that gets you in trouble at all?
Wasn't this the point you were kind of making, Jared?
Yeah. Everything.
Yeah, weren't you making this part of the point you were making where it was like, I like the Pro by Enos. It's a new character. I hated this book. I absolutely hated this book, and I'm an Enos fan, okay? But just imagine if they had used one of Black Canary or Wonder Woman. I agree with this,
Right. That was also Patrick Wilhelm's point, too. Mm-hmm. It's not that R-rated superheroes are the problem. The problem is R-rated superheroes as the same as G-rated superheroes kind of thing.
Well,
it's kind of
that goes back to being, I can't remember the phrase that was used earlier about being basically a shepherd of the characters, the lore.
Right.
Like, and okay, if you're going to work on a character that's in somebody else's sandbox, it's not your own original.
Right. Yeah.
Do your homework and respect the nature of what that character is.
The problem I have with that is that's the editor's view, and that's the editor's job. That's not how the creative people are. The creative people always want to get away with a little more, always want to subvert a little more. That's just the nature of creativity in these situations.
And what they should do.
It's the editor's job to look out for that stuff and shepherd the character. It's not the writer and artist's job to shepherd the character, unless they're that type of person.
Well, the editor needs to do a better job of looking for the people that can do that character justice.
Yeah, that is 100% the editor's job to shepherd the character. Except they don't. do that anymore. They haven't done that in years.
Yeah, and there's a bigger picture with this.
When we need him.
There's a bigger picture here too. That like, I mean, we're focused on what we're talking about here, Batman and stuff. The bigger picture here is that, I mean, if we didn't have things allowed to be messed with, we wouldn't have Frank Miller's Daredevil. We wouldn't have our happy accidents like Wolverine. We wouldn't have even Deadpool. So, that's what the problem is. Do we
see that?
I don't know. That's what I mean. This is such a heavy thing. I don't want to be hypocritical. I don't want to stifle anybody's creativity, but at the same time, I don't want to be that 10-year-old kid from Toy Story blowing up toys. You know what I mean?
But those were actually still child appropriate.
Yeah.
Those were actually still child appropriate. And what's the problem too is I'm
just making.
Patrick Wilhelm brought up this point too, that like he brought up the Killing Joke in Dark Knight. Were supposed to be standalone graphic novels outside of continuity.
Yeah.
And they made them in continuity. And they took the darkness from those two standalone things and made it the mainstream Batman.
Yeah.
Them being retconned back into continuity per se, that happened a little later on, did it not?
Yeah, I know. But that's what they eventually did. And Alan Moore has bemoaned his own part in that, and taking the fun out of Batman and turning him into dark.
Yeah.
Thing.
Alan Moore bemoaning that was one of the reasons he did Top 10 and
all of ABC Comics.
To get back something more lighthearted. Yeah.
Now I'm just asking this question here, just to kind of like, let's just cover the whole thing, because we talk and then move on and stuff. I don't want to keep calling back, but one cover in particular I'll bring up with that Frank Miller Daredevil run that I want to know if you really thought is child appropriate was the cover of Bullseye holding up Elektra, stabbing her with her sai on the cover and holding her up, even though
there was no exit wound, was there?
You could see it through the clothes. I was getting ready to say.
That was the rule of appropriateness. No exit wounds.
Even though you can
just to let you know, there was a rule.
Even though there's a tent on her back,
right?
With
there's
her
no exit wound. It's a tent of her cloth. That's not an exit wound.
I'm not asking what that was back then. Do you think that's child appropriate? It had to,
Yes.
I don't know.
We got Paolo down here. You're damn wrong.
Look, when it comes to selling these things, I'm unashamedly in favor of using the tobacco industry's advertising standards.
And that cover sold, would sell books. If you saw that, you're going to want to see it. You know what I mean? I totally get it.
I actually think children are pretty good at distinguishing between fantasy and reality. It's adults that have a harder time with it.
Yeah.
Times, yeah.
And a lot of the way, look, after having kids and being around kids and working with kids in schools for 5 or 6 years, a lot of the way kids react to things is how they see the adults react to it.
Yeah, but if you tell kids this is reality and this is fantasy, they get it.
Well, we come from that generation where you really didn't have to say too much of that, Jared. You know what I mean?
But if you do tell, they understand this is reality, this is fantasy.
Yeah,
I don't think if you tell an adult that, they don't always get it.
Well, I could talk clinical about kids and things like that, and I don't want to do it here and have people think I'm trying to tell them what to do with their kids and stuff. But at the end of the day, what's in your house to me is your responsibility.
Right.
And they're always like, oh, there's so much out there in the internet. What they go to a friend's house. Well, that's why you got to teach your kids about integrity, doing the right thing when nobody's looking at them. Your kids are also little people who are going to have.
There go you and Scott thinking people are responsible again.
There we go. That's what I mean.
Yeah, you should come to the conclusion that, hey, one of these days your kid's not going to be a kid anymore. They're going to eventually become an adult.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. You could have a whole big speech about this and stuff, but in my opinion, if somebody does not want their kid to see something that's in their house, and that's fine. That's their house. That's what their kid does. And there's a whole lot of stuff out there. That's why you get the title parent. You know what I mean? There's a little work here. Schools. A lot of people are letting schools. I'm going to get off this, but a lot of people are letting schools do the parenting. And I'll shut up.
What was Gore Vidal saying there about Wikipedia stuff?
Yeah. I think Jared's Wikipedia reader point, who doesn't read comics and probably is not a reader, at all of anything, but likes the idea of superheroes and action films is in the audience in mind.
Yeah,
Um,
they're the audience in mind for the movies, for the licensing. They really buy the stuff. And like I said, I think it's the real comic book fans talking about stuff that makes them interested in it.
Yeah. It's Tom Bagley likes having a Kill Bill action sequence in the middle of Schindler's List.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Doesn't the success of comic book movies for all ages and superhero merchandise defeat the argument that R-rated Marvel or DC comics influence people's attitudes toward those characters? I also like to point out that I think the reason we had a Joker that was R-rated was so we can get another Academy Award nomination, even though maybe not a win, to get some credibility to a DC movie. I mean, there's a politics with movies like that, you know.
Let me think. What was he asking there? Hold on a second. I'm trying to figure that out. Doesn't the success of comic book movies for all ages and superhero merchandise defeat the argument that R-rated Marvel or DC comics influence people's attitudes towards these characters?
Not really.
No, I don't think so. I think they're two different things. Well, first of all, Marvel has not really done any R-rated movies. I mean, there's Deadpool, and that's why they're so antsy about doing Deadpool. And the success of DC's R-rated stuff is hit or miss. They don't really have Marvel's machine, and they want it. And they're not going to get Marvel's machine if half their movies are kids can't watch, and half the movies kids can watch, and they're selling both, and the same characters are in both movies.
But they haven't. I mean, am I wrong? I mean, the Joker won an Academy Award. Joaquin Phoenix got it for Joker. Am I right? I mean, I don't watch those award shows. Yeah, I don't want to watch those. I don't watch those award shows, man. I
don't either.
Dick Breedford is possibly the first person to switch gears in his audience with Frankenstein. It started a funny ha-ha book and came back as a horror book after a few months break.
I just started reading that this month.
I've met adults that can
really good.
Yeah. Oh God, here. I do agree with you on the parenting thing. Thank you.
Oh, everybody agrees parents should be responsible for their children. They're just not.
Yeah.
There's just plenty of them who aren't.
Which is why when I was working in schools, those kids ended up in my program. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I got out.
Parents need to be responsible and let their kids read Barbarella.
I'm just saying there's such a problem out there. It's one of many reasons I got out of that part of the business. So I'm well aware of the parenting out there. Yeah. Here we go. Edward says that Daredevil issue, the one I was talking about the size, is teen appropriate. No exit wound. I love this thumbnail here. If you make comic movies for the Avatar, if you make comic movies for the comic readers specifically, they won't succeed.
Oh yeah,
our dollars aren't enough. They need everyone's money. I get that.
But the comic book, like I said, the 50,000 comic book fans are force multipliers.
Yeah,
they get being that. That's what we were discussing before. How DC, if AT&T sees any value in DC, and one of the values I see is just comic fans. When you have 50,000 people who talk, and like most comic book fans talk about their comic books, we see if you cannot get 50,000 people to talk about your product online by paying them, but we do. And I think that adds to the hype of movies and stuff.
Well,
I think that's a very valuable thing. Hopefully AT&T will see it and keep DC going as is.
One thing I just thought of is the projects that do well with comics readers.
do.
Exactly. Our TV series, and I'm wondering, maybe it's just the structure of it being serialized that appeals more to that audience.
What was that? The
structure of a serialized TV series, parallel to the serialized structure of comic books, appeals to that audience.
I can still remember the early 2000s when Joe Quesada was saying Marvel doesn't care about continuity anymore. Just as TV with especially with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, they led the way, was discovering continuity.
Right.
So I think one of the problems is that and to me, continuity is just believing that all this stuff happened to one person. That's all I mean by continuity. You know, you don't have to get every detail ironed out. You just have to believe Peter Parker in this issue of Spider-Man is the same Peter Parker from 3 years ago.
Right.
I think they've dropped the ball on that.
Yeah. I always thought continuity in that regard, is just a different term for the word history.
Yeah.
And the first major, well, maybe not, but let's say the first major TV show that I can think of that really delved into that and had respect for the continuity and tried to incorporate, was successful at it to some degree, was Star Trek: The Next Generation.
See, I don't even really think that was. It's not like, because they still didn't have the big bad every season. They still didn't have, episode 19 that referenced epised 7.
There were a few characters that came back, but they didn't even show stuff like previously on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Right. I think Buffy was really the first one to embrace
X-Files
continuity.
I was about to say that, Paolo.
X-Files and Babylon 5.
Yeah, I swear. I feel like I was about to say that, teacher, but no, I was about to yell X-Files.
X-Files to an extent, but X-Files still only had a little continuity sprinkled in it.
As soon as as they noticed that the alien conspiracy was the driving force of the story, practically every episode was alien conspiracy, starting on season 3.
But there were still individual episodes. They still didn't always refer back to other
Monster
episodes. I think Buffy was the first one to embrace it wholeheartedly.
And Babylon 5 was definitely following a particular path.
Well, yeah, Babylon 5 is the best series that most people don't know.
Babylon 5 was more like a space opera, though. That had a soap opera structure.
I think part of the big reason that those shows are so hard to really think of is they came a long way because when they came into reruns on the networks, they would go by ratings. And if you had a serialized show, you couldn't show them out of order and expect people to understand,
Right.
So go ahead.
The ultimate serialized show is Rockford Files.
Okay.
And most of those shows remind me more of Rockford Files than they do of Buffy. Though there was some continuity in them, they really weren't about the continuity.
Babylon 5 was about the continuity.
Well, it was about the soap opera structure. You're right. I mean, I only watched the first season of it, but I know it was about.
Oh, yeah.
But it wasn't about
good stuff.
It wasn't about continuity in the same way that like comics are. That was Babylon 5 was highly structured. Babylon 5 was more like the continuity of a novel than a comic book.
Sure, I mean that thing is practically running is practically a take on Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. So I think that's different. I think that's a different type of continuity than comic book continuity. Comic book continuity builds on itself in a strange, because it's all different people doing all different things with no plan.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, guys, I gotta start winding it down here. I was just kind of looking for an appropriate place. We've had a great show. I need to find the Punisher talk we did and kind of put it in a pinned post so people can skip to that. That was a great talk, the Punisher stuff. And I'd also like somebody to cut this up and just have that little excerpt out there. I mean, if Christmas is around the corner, so there you go.
We'll see what we can do.
Yeah. But I think this was a fantastic episode and a little, good holiday special there. Yeah. I liked it. We talked about our food, then we went straight to serial killers after a while. That's a holiday. We even, Mystery Science Theater serial killers, whatever you want to do.
We didn't have either B. Arthur or what's his name show up. I can't think of it. Art Carney. So we have a better holiday show.
Yeah. I got to find, well, go start out live and watch those old Vincent Price Halloween specials, but anyway, or Thanksgiving specials. Oh, man. So, what's everybody's plans and last words for the weekend? Anything going on with anybody? I've got another Thanksgiving coming up. We're going to be doing in the house. So,
I gotta finish writing a lot of text for the car magazine.
I gotta do the production on a custom comic that Bill Sienkiewicz is doing the cover for. Happy Thanksgiving to our honorary American pal, Lo.
I still don't know in which state I live.
I think it may have been when you said that when Europeans think of America talking about its South, it's always Texas. So that's what got you in, brother. Oh, somebody said MacGyver.
But once again,
but to Europeans, Texans are as Yankee as Bostonians.
MacGyver reminds me more of Rockford Files than Buffy. So
MacGyver doesn't really have continuity. There are recurring villains and MacGyver's friends, but they don't have references.
Just like in the Rockford Files, sometimes a plot would come back 10 episodes later, but it wasn't really continuity like Buffy was.
Mm-hmm.
I was mad about Rockford Files because when I caught it, and I have no idea if it was reruns or not, who knows? But I remember he had a huge trailer, and I lived in a trailer at the time, and I'm like, where'd he get that? His trailer felt huge. That's what cracked me up.
That was just the cameras. It wasn't that big. Those look bigger on the inside.
Yeah. Well, when you're a kid, you know what I'm saying.
It was a TARDIS, Tim.
There we go. Yes, interdimensional. All right. Scott, what you got, man? You got any last words or anything you want to talk about coming up? Like a camera? Have you heard anything about a camera?
No. Well, I haven't checked my mail in a few days. It probably should be there by now. One thing I was thinking about earlier, I didn't get a chance to bring it up. You were talking about Dolph Lundgren.
Yeah.
30 years late now, but he would have been a perfect Doc Savage in a movie.
Was Doc Savage that tall in the books?
Yes.
Awesome. I've got some of the pulp novels over here. I flipped through a few of them, but I never really thought about how big he was. Yeah, I could see that.
I always found it weird that Doc Savage was better than all the experts he gathered. Usually a guy gathers a team and he can do some stuff, and he gathers experts from different fields. Doc Savage was better than all the experts he gathered. I was like, what's the point of gathering the experts if you're more expert than all of them?
He wanted off on a tangent. I mean, Doc Savage was Superman before Superman in a lot of different ways.
Doc Savage just wanted friends and cannon fodder. Okay, he wanted to feel like he was part of a group. He wanted camaraderie because he was so outside of things. And Superman was the same way, man. I always wanted to do the story where you took an old Justice League story and you do it from Superman's point of view, and you find out he's holding back and he's actually protecting people so they feel useful. He could just go in there and wipe it out, but he's like making sure he lets everybody play a part in their little adventure. That's how I feel about Doc Savage.
Gore Vidal never liked the music for Rockford Files. A Philistine. Oh my goodness. That's the Rockford Files had some of the theme is one of the best TV themes ever.
He did like the Pulp Savage stuff.
Tim will probably agree with me on this, but I want to throw this out there just to see. Best TV theme ever, Johnny Quest.
Rockford Files.
I'm gonna put it in the top 3 there, brother. I got to think about that one, but yeah, when it comes to TV themes,
I want to look it up.
Oh man, it's like this funky jazz.
Changes keys 4 times. Yeah.
Mike Post, I think, who did the Rockford Files. He's actually famous for it.
Yeah.
Mike Post.
And if you hear the music from for opening Rockford Files movie, it's really good. And I'm not much of a soundtrack person.
Yeah. Johnny Quest theme changes keys 4 times up. Whatever. I'm not a music guy like that. 4 keys. And it goes into this crescendo with the horns and the drums and it just juices you up. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
it's pretty hardcore jazz music. Yeah. It's really good stuff.
MASH is another classic theme that Gore Vidal mentioned. He does like that at least.
Yeah, until I learned the freaking real lyrics when I was like 11. You know, the Night King does have lyrics.
And you're like,
Just
well,
made you depressed after them.
Yeah, it's Andrew Griffith with the whistle and stuff. It's the most recognizable, I think, for the show. You hear that and you know what's on.
same thing with Sanford Son.
Yeah. All right, guys, I do have to wrap it up.
Yeah.
So thanks
we're
for everybody
wrapping up.
hanging out. Great hanging out with you guys. This
Weekend
was
out
fun.
there.
This was awesome. It was awesome. Tonight was a good night. Liked it.
Yeah.
All right, everybody that popped in on us and stuff, man. Enjoy the rest of your leftovers and your turkey eating for days. Turkey sandwiches, turkey stew. It's all possible.
See, that's why the rest of the world does not have Thanksgiving. We could not. It's the leftovers.
The leftovers are great. You heat them up in the frying pan.
No, not twice in 2 months.
What is this
crust on potatoes and stuffing?
What is this Moon Man word leftovers that you guys are using? That doesn't exist.
What? I lost that. What?
The concept of leftovers is a foreign concept to me.
Yeah, there's no.
Okay,
There's no leftovers.
do you have something in your house called a table, or do you eat that too?
Everything's a bookshelf in his house. Everything,
including the books.
All right. Good night, all.
I have the periodic table.
Later.
Bye.
Bye.